Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable, see playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 321, The Head of the Luo Clan. There was a murderous gleam in Ken's eyes as he stared at the lady. She might look as elegant and dainty as a lotus blossom, but he knew she was as vile as a demon. Cut me a break here. After all, I'm your uncle, Yan, begged Ken, knowing he couldn't escape her. Oh, do you think I'm such a sweet child who will blindly obey you? Yan studied him closely, and her eyes were full of apathy as she thought back a few years, to the loss of her father. Although she was young, it was a significant blow to her. Glaring at her uncle, she cruelly dismissed his begging. Bryson was the one who orchestrated your father's death. I had no part in the matter, stammered Ken. Nodding, Yan said, that's true. It would have been impossible for you to murder my father since he was superior to you. But I have to find the truth to what happened to my father. Therefore, I won't let you go. Immediately, Ken's face paled, and he frowned. There was an ominous yet sneaky flash in his eyes as he said, What? Well, if you don't let me leave, then, you can go to perdition. Ken was the most attractive man from the Luo clan, and his fair-faced skin looked as pure as jade, contradicting that he was 40 years old. Right now, however, deep lines twisted Ken's face so much, which gave him a stern appearance. He looked like a different man entirely. Suddenly, 3 boxes gleaming with an iron radiance appeared in his hand. Thunderkill halberd. When Ken's eldest son, Andrew, fought Zen, he had used this halberd's less formidable counterpart, the Thunder Rob halberd, to attempt to assassinate Zen. Now, here was Andrew's father, facing off against Zen's sister with the Thunderkill halberd. 100 or so years ago, an ancestor in the Luo clan had the great fortune of procuring the Thunderkill halberd, a sort of hidden mechanical armament. There were only 3 rounds of halberds in total. Because of how precious it was, the members of the Luo clan never used it, and Ken wouldn't have drawn the Thunderkill halberd if he didn't need to. Even though the Thunder Rob halberd was an imitation of the Thunderkill halberd, it performed excellently, pointing to how powerful the Thunderkill halberd was. Chink, chink, chink. A metallic sound came, and dragon-like lightning exploded from boxes, transforming into halberds. They shot at Yan, immediately penetrating her body. Ken scowled at her, and within his heart, he was shouting, Ha! These halberds are in you now and will shatter you from your core. You'll be destroyed, from the inside out. An acrid stench of flesh smoldering filled the air as Ken eyeballed Yan and imagined how the lightning in her was raging, burning her as it ripped her apart. He was sure that Yan would be demolished at any moment now. But, after standing there, watching for a long time, nothing happened, and the stink of lightning was entirely gone. Yan looked unharmed. What? This makes no sense, thought Ken, perplexed at what went wrong. As Ken watched intensely, he had been imagining so many possible outcomes, from Yan being rent in 2 to her exploding and pieces of Yan flinging throughout the area. But, even considering the possibility of her using her powers to defend against the onslaught, Ken never envisioned she would be unscathed. Ken's jaw dropped, and he stood in complete silence, unable to wrap his head around the idea that the halberds were absorbed into Yan, and yet, she remained unaffected. Uncle Ken, this way please. There are many people waiting for you in the martial arts hall, said Yan as she waved her hand dismissively. In the martial arts hall. Although the Luo clan had declined, with their property having been appropriated and divided amongst other clans, and the once prolific income had dwindled, still the numbers of the family members were substantial and all the children of the Luo clan had already gathered in the martial arts hall. As a matter of fact, there were approximately 700 or 800 people present at today's gathering. The crowd cast disparaging eyes at Bryson as he lay expiringly on the martial arts hall platform. He used to be cruel, and people shuddered when they saw him. And after Ken was sent to the hall by Yan, he huddled himself up not far away from Bryson, shivering. What happened today was pivotal in the Luo clan's future, everyone knew it. A dreamlike, magical moment unfolded before them. Although many of the spectators had been hoping Bryson would be knocked off his pedestal, it was unimaginable that that day had come so fast. Zen had just returned, but his overwhelming might had manifested the fantasy into actuality. They knew Zen was the person who could turn the Luo clan around. What shocked them the most though was Zen and Yan's exceptional strength. There wasn't a doubt in anyone's mind that no one compared to Zen and Yan in Sea County. These two could undoubtedly lead the Luo clan to prosperity, which would positively serve the children. Suddenly, the spectators saw Bridger heading to the platform. He tottered with the help of two retainers. Although Zen had defeated Bryson and was the expected head of the household, he couldn't just usurp Bryson's position by force. Instead, he needed a respected elder with high prestige to announce that Zen was the leader. Zen's strength was obvious, but he was merely a junior member in the family. While the Luo clan was an ordinary clan of the Burning Sky Empire, the regulations for the tribe were the same for the great families. And a person's position couldn't be determined by strength alone, it also depended on his influence and status. After all, if Zen took over as the head of the Luo clan by force alone, then what was the difference between him and Bryson? It was just a short yet rigorous walk for the elder man to get to the platform. When Bridger finally got up on the platform, he paused, gasping for breath. Having endured many ups and downs during his life, Bridger didn't excite easily, and his usually empty, jaded stare was bright and brimming with enthusiasm. After he'd caught his breath, Bridger said in a husky, calm voice, "Zen, son of Mike, the former master of the Luo clan, is the proper member to succeed his father to the position as the head of the Luo clan. Bryson and Ken butchered our former chief, Mike, taking his place, and for such are vile reptiles. What Zen has done brings what we lost back to our clan. From today on, Zen is the leader of the Luo clan. What do you say to this? Zen's our chief as it should be. Bryson's a worthless jerk whose cruelty left many of our family members living pitifully. Zen has proved to be the popular sentiment. I support Zen." Now, there could be no objection. The men had great insight and knew Zen's strength was far superior to anyone in Sea County. They also thought that a figure like him mightn't care about hoarding the treasures passed from generation to generation in the Luo clan at all. Actually, the family members should court Zen. The idea crossed everyone's mind, including Bridger's. Bridger had seen many years and based on his experience and intuition he knew that as long as they had Zen leading them, the Luo clan would have a successful future. Ahem. Bridger cleared his throat, attracting the room's attention, then he went on to declare, with no objections, I declare Zen as the head of the Luo clan. When Bridger was done with the announcement, Zen stepped forward. Instead of a long, flowery speech, Zen just offered one sentence. I will make those who took Luo property compensate it double. Thunderous applause rose through the crowd. That simple promise was enough to get everyone excited. Having been under the absolute control of Bryson, and with other clans bullying them, they had to be a patient and friendly clan, for the sake of the common good, so, the clan had declined over time. Now, not only did they not have to tolerate any bullying, they could make them pay for past treatment. As the applause died, Zen turned to Bryson with a look of disgust and demanded, Now, Uncle Bryson, you will tell me how my father died. He, chortled Bryson. Bryson's shoulders shook slightly, and he had a weasel-like sneer while he lay on the floor and spat out, Why ask me? You already believe I killed your father, so, fine. I killed your father. Zen shook his head, flatly, and said, No, my father was at the nature level, and you weren't strong enough. Therefore, there must have been someone else. And you think that I'm going to tell you? Questioned Bryson. He had a wry grin and his eyes sparked with an odd gleam as he continued, If you promise, before everyone here, not to kill me, then, perhaps, I could be persuaded to talk. Zen pursed his lips tightly as he slowly shook his head. If I'm going to die whether I tell you or not, why would I be stupid enough to tell you anything? Jeered Bryson. Since Bryson refused to tell Zen the truth, Zen turned his eyes at Ken, hoping to get the answer. But before Ken said anything, Bryson warned, Ken, if you tell him, he will kill you immediately. So keep your mouth shut until you die. Hearing what Bryson said, Ken kept his mouth shut tightly. It appeared he'd decided not to talk. A chilly smile spread across Zen's face. Do you really think I can't make you talk? As he spoke, a translucent sharp thorn appeared between his eyebrows and shot at Bryson. Chapter 322, The Guide to His Fate. For Zen, at his current level, the spiritual thorn could play two roles in his battles. The first role was to attack his opponent stealthily. The soul thorn had surprisingly good effects on the cultivators who were weak in their souls, or those who lacked strong protection and soul defense. As Zen's soul thorn attacked the cultivators, merely an instantaneous loss of consciousness could mean failure, or even worse, death in battle. The second function was to punish people. The feeling of penetration into one's soul was excruciating, the agony indescribable. To give a perceptible measurement, the pain it imposed on one's soul was at least 10 times greater than that caused by penetration into one's physical body. The human body's capacity to bear pain was restricted. So, when people felt a lot of physical pain, their minds stopped controlling their bodies. Without commands from the nervous system, they simply fell into a state of shock. A person did not experience pain when he or she passed out. Coma was the best elixir one could hope for when one was in that kind of physical pain. However, one's soul could never lose consciousness, no matter how much pain it endured. The soul thoroughly tasted every single splinter of that pain. Phew, Zen released his soul thorn without hesitation. As the soul thorn hissed and made its way to stab into Bryson's head imperceptibly, a low groan escaped Bryson's lips at the pain he felt. His distorted facial expression told the others of the suffering he was enduring. Bryson's affliction also warned the others how terribly sorry they would be if they dared disobey his orders and betray the Luo clan. Yet, Bryson still kept his mouth shut, not giving out the information that Zen needed. He knew that he would die immediately after he told Zen the secret, which was worse than being kept alive in such a painful state, even if he didn't believe his soul could take the agony anymore. The discord with Zen was not a small one. It was related to the murder of Zen's father. Zen would certainly avenge his father's death by killing Bryson, the murderer. In Zen's mind, that was the only end to the hostility he felt. The only thing Bryson could do was to tolerate the pain that Zen imposed on him. He bit his lip hard to stop himself from moaning, but sweat trickled down his face all too quickly as the ache became too much to ignore. "Is that enough pain for you?" Zen asked him coldly. Still, no words slipped out of Bryson's mouth. "It's fine if you don't want to talk," Zen said as his gaze fell on Ken. Ken was visibly shaking as he watched Bryson. He knew he himself was capable of enduring far less pain than what his brother could. Before Zen could say another word, Ken answered him quickly. "I'll talk. I can tell you everything you want to know. It was the Chi clan. Ford Chi, the head of the Chi clan. It was he who killed Mike. He killed your father with his own 2 hands. Please, Zen, please don't kill me. I was just a..." Bryson sighed silently as he heard Ken's words. "My idiot brother is entirely unreliable," he thought to himself. Zen nodded, replying, "Very good." As Zen waved his arm, the sword in his hand flexed, reflecting a cold, sharp beam of light. It ran straight at Ken. Ken's face paled, his entire body shaking more than ever. As the sword almost reached Ken's forehead, it was redirected. If it had pushed just a few inches farther, Ken's body would have been lying lifelessly on the ground. However, the sword changed direction and pushed into Bryson instead, without hesitation. Poof! The sword cut off Bryson's neck, and his head fell onto the ground. Zen had once said that he wouldn't kill anyone from the Luo clan since they were family. He shared their blood, which was why back on Hell Mountain, Zen had only disabled Perrin but hadn't taken Perrin's life. However, today was different. Zen had to sentence Bryson to death. Zen needed to kill him on his own. Bryson was one of his father's killers. He had been the primary conspirator in the murder. Zen had to avenge Mike's death, and the first step in doing that was taking Bryson's life. Being an accomplice in Mike's murder aside, Bryson was also always regarded with general disgust. Everyone in the Luo clan hated his guts. If Zen hadn't killed Bryson today, he wouldn't have been able to earn the trust of the youngsters in the clan. Deep down, these people had been fearful of Bryson ever since Mike's death. It wasn't hard to gather that little fact even if they didn't convey it to Zen. Zen would have to leave the Luo clan one day, and after Zen left the clan, they would be afraid that Bryson would rise to power again. He would have come back in the future if Zen hadn't killed him today. Each one of the members would have a price to pay by then. So they wanted Bryson dead. It was the only way they would feel safe in the Luo clan. For the youngsters, as well as for the good of the clan, Zen had been committed to wiping out this concern of theirs. Bryson Luo had to die. Zen was all too aware of how everyone released their harsh breaths as they witnessed Bryson's death. Several wisps of malicious aura escaped Bryson's corpse. Zen knew Bryson had been the disciple of the blood prisoner. He had learned the blood evil force from his master. Still, Zen did not expect Bryson had that much amount of malice aura amassed in his body. It seemed that in order to improve his strength and levels, Bryson had killed a lot of people, much more than Zen had expected. Eventually, the malicious aura that broke loose from Bryson's body gathered and condensed into a blood-colored crystal. Adding up the blood-colored crystals Zen had collected before, he had 4 of these crystals in total now. Zen was already thinking of how to utilize the malicious aura in these blood-colored crystals. Since he had already accumulated some malicious aura and he would keep accumulating more and more malicious aura in the future, it would be best if he chose and learned a cultivation method that would help him make good use of it. But for now, he would have to resolve the leftover issues of the Luo clan and clean up its disloyal troublemakers. Zen turned to face the members of the Luo clan, announcing loudly but solemnly, Bryson Luo has now been executed. Ken Luo remains to be sentenced. Ken was the secondary conspirator in my father's death. He doesn't deserve a death sentence for his crime, so I leave you all to decide how to punish him. Tomorrow, I'd like to pay my respects to Luo's ancestral graves. I will personally visit and pray at the tombs of our ancestors for a prosperous future of the Luo clan. After his announcement, Zen handed over the entire business of the martial arts hall to his other uncles and the other elders of the Luo clan. Having executed the troublesome Bryson Luo, Zen's job here was done. He trusted that after taking control of the Luo clan, the elders would tackle the rest of the issues better than he would. After hearing Zen's announcement, Ken's pale face finally regained a bit of color. He had thought himself doomed to die. The idea that Zen would keep him alive never occurred to him. As he watched Zen turn around and leave, his strong, broad back coming into view, Ken's eyes glazed over with awe for his nephew. Zen was no longer a small boy. He had grown up to become a man who could well handle the affairs of the Luo clan. Even in heaven, Ken's brother, Mike Luo, would be happy to see his son lead the clan into a new flourishing era. The Dragon Garden was where the eldest branch of the Luo clan had lived before. But since the death of Mike Luo, the eldest branch had declined. The Dragon Garden had been sealed up, becoming a forbidden place for anyone in the Luo clan to enter. Sometimes, people walked past the Dragon Garden to take a quick glimpse at it, but seldom did anybody step inside. Due to neglect, the estate saw many weeds cropping up here and there, as high as an adult person. The walls of the garden had thick layers of dust atop of them. Today, dozens of Luo clan servants rushed to the Dragon Garden to tidy it up. They swept the ground, removed the weeds, and pruned the bonsais. So dedicated were they that the place was as good as new in no time. It was transformed from a cold and desolated place into one that radiated joy and liveliness, all in half a day. This renewed Dragon Garden had been the reminiscent of the olden days for everyone in the Luo clan. They all missed those golden days when the Luo clan had still been the strongest clan in Sea County. As Zen and Yan finished their meals and walked into the Dragon Garden, they were stunned at the scenery before them. Zen didn't give any orders to the servants to clean up the Dragon Garden, but there were some thoughtful ones in the family who always did more than they were asked to. As Yan stepped inside, a wide smile across her lips, she made her way to a swing in the corner. When she had been a toddler, this had been her favorite place to play. So much time had passed. In all these years, the original ropes of the swing had decayed. She saw that they were replaced with a pair of new ropes that the servants probably tied up earlier today. Sitting on the swing, she swayed back and forth as it moved in the wind. Her long slender legs hung in the air. It reminded her of freedom. She might be physically restrained because of the existence of that evil man, but at this moment, she didn't care. Her mind was free as her eyes roamed across the beautiful sky. She had her wonderful, loving brother at her side and nothing else could make her happier. Seeing the heartfelt smile on Yan's beautiful face, Zen smiled too. This was the first time he saw her smile so freely since their reunion with each other. To Zen, it felt like his happiest moment after so many years of separation from his sister. Yan was still a little girl. She was just forced to take a lot of brunt on her small shoulders, all because of her special physical constitution and her extraordinary talent. Even now, she couldn't escape those restraints. Although Kenneth had agreed to let Yan come home with Zen this time, he had warned Zen not to try to help her run away, for it would be in vain. The evil man had already imprinted a mark on Yan. Wherever she escaped, no matter how far, he would find her. Revolting against such a powerful man so blatantly and publicly would not be a good idea, at least not at the moment. If that man found out about Zen's defiance, things could only get worse for them. At first, Zen had wanted to take Yan into the fairy palace, which was so mysterious and astonishing that even Zen found it indecipherable. However, Zen was only the temporary owner of the fairy palace. There were so many things that he was not authorized to do there. He couldn't be sure the palace would be safe enough for Yan to stay in. Yan was still on the swing. The sun was setting. As the last rays of sunlight glimmered on Yan, she looked as beautiful as a painting, beyond description in words. His eyes resting on her wide smile, Zen clenched his fists tighter and made himself a silent promise to protect his little sister till his dying breath. Even if one day he had to sacrifice himself for that, he would hardly hesitate. He would exhaust the last of his strength to give his sister Yan a safe, secure, and happy future. To Zen, she was the most important person, his invaluable treasure, the only family member he had left. What Zen didn't know was that everything was destined under the law of the world. Whatever he might encounter, experience, and suffer was set in stone for him. It would undoubtedly be a journey of hardships, but Yan Luo would act as the guide to his fate, the light that paved way for him to march forward. This was Zen and Yan's destiny, but neither of them realized it at the moment. Early morning next day, the elders of the Luo clan followed behind Zen as he climbed the hill that was in the backyard of the Luo house. It was a blessed sight. This was the Luo clan's cemetery. Several tombstones were dug into the ground. They loomed silently and solemnly on the hill. The ancestors of the Luo clan slept soundly in this tranquil and dignified atmosphere. Zen prayed piously to the fathers of Luo. As the new leader of the Luo clan, this was the first ritual that signified his venerable status. 3 bamboo incense sticks had been lit up by the servants. Zen held them in his hands and bowed 3 times in front of his father's tomb. Having finished the worship ritual, Zen left the graveyard, his expression becoming sterner. The intention to kill was clear in his eyes. Some of the people in C County must die for their sins. Meanwhile, in a room located on the highest story of the Crescent building in C County, 5 people sat around a table, discussing things of significance. The 5 were the leaders of the current top 5 clans of the C County. They represented the Huang clan, the Qi clan, the He clan, the Zhang clan, and the Chen clan. These days, nearly all the mineral resources, the shops, and the gambling stalls in C County came under their jurisdiction. The Luo clan had once ranked first, being the richest, strongest, and most powerful clan that had suppressed all others in the C County. However, as the Luo clan began to fall and decline, its place at the top had been replaced by the others. Gradually, the Luo clan had ebbed away and dropped to the 6th place. The properties that had once belonged to the Luo clan were snatched up by the other 5 clans. Now, the Luo clan had become so insignificant and dispensable that no one even cared to mention it. Zen Luo, he must die. My son Darcy was killed in his hands. I have to avenge my son. Does Zen believe that with the Cloud sect to back him, he can breach protocol and kill anyone he wants? He can't take what he wants so ruthlessly. A man shouted, so much in anger that his face went red. It was Chuck Huang, Darcy's father. He sat at the helm of the round table and was the head of the Huang clan. Chuck had a lot of children, but Darcy had happened to be his favorite. He was Chuck's first son and the most talented among all of Chuck's offspring. Chuck had wanted to devote everything, every resource that belonged to the Huang clan on Darcy, for his growth and education. Darcy would have been worthy of this investment. What Chuck hadn't expected was that Rat Zen to come back to the Luo clan. Before Chuck could do anything about it, Darcy had already been involved in the conflict within the Luo clan and killed under Zen's sword for some unknown and inexplicable reasons. Chuck only knew that a friend whom Darcy had been hanging around with recently was from the Luo clan, but how did that relate to Zen? Why did Zen kill Darcy? What was the connection between the two? How did they even meet? Did Darcy do something to attract that kind of hatred from Zen? And how deep was this hatred that Zen just killed Darcy without even a second thought? After all, Darcy had been the Huang's heir. He had been quite a talent among the younger generation, not to forget that he belonged to the most respected clan of C County. Chuck knew nothing of the affair, but he trusted his son to be the innocent one. How was he supposed to endure his poor son's death? Well, I do agree with you. I believe Zen must die too. But how are we going to deal with him? I've heard that even the notorious blood prisoner, who was wanted by the government at any cost, has been killed by him. Chuck, I doubt you are unfamiliar with the blood prisoner's strength or how powerful he was, Ford replied, worry etched across his face. Truth be told, the one who feared Zen the most at the moment was Ford himself. The other heads might be afraid of Zen at some level, but they didn't have any real and profoundly irreconcilable issues with him. They had nothing more than some small conflicts or disputes regarding the interests of their clans. Zen had no vendetta with them. The worst-case scenario, they would have to relinquish the industries and properties they had robbed from the Luo clan and give them back to Zen. Maybe they would even compensate some more with money, and they would be fine. Even Chuck could move on from the death of his son and refrain from avenging Darcy. He could swallow his resentment for Zen. But it wouldn't be the same for Ford. He had killed Zen's father, Mike Luo, personally. It was not even slightly similar to encroaching on the benefits of the Luo clan. Once Zen learned the identity of his father's true murderer, he would not forgive Ford. Zen would kill him. Ford could already foresee his miserable ending. The chances of him remaining alive were slim, to say the least. Now that Bryson had been executed, then his cowardly brother, Ken, must have already given Ford away. It was only a matter of time before Zen marched to Ford's place and took his life. The Huang clan, the He clan, the Chen clan, and the Zhang clan had the choice of surrendering their wealth to oblige Zen and seek his forgiveness. Their heads could make grants to the Luos for the safety of their clans. But Ford Chi, he would have to surrender his life. All to quench Zen's burning fire of hatred and revenge. For the redemption for his sins, Ford would have to die in the hopes that Zen would at least spare the Chi clan. Chapter 323, Negotiation. He wants us to give the property back to the Luo clan. Keep dreaming. Chen clan's master coldly scoffed at the idea. If one clan possessed more property in Sea County where resources were now scarce, then the other clans wouldn't have enough. The situation drove all the clans to compete fiercely. After murdering Mike with Zen's two uncles, Ford had managed to grab a lot of property from the Luo clan. Since then, the Chi clan had ranked second in Sea County, right next to the Huang clan. The Chen clan, the He clan and the Zhang clan had gained much profit from Mike's death and now they were reluctant to give the benefits back to the Luo clan. Because all the clans had many servants and guards to feed, if they gave back the property to the Luo clan, they wouldn't be able to live as comfortably as they were accustomed to. Although Ford originally intended to return the property to the Luo clan, it was clear that even if he did so, Zen wouldn't let him go. It was high time for the clans to unite and fight against Zen. Yes, since the Luo clan was not powerful enough, it's only natural that we should take over its property. It's impossible for Zen to take all these back by himself. We should discuss how to go against him. Maybe it was just a stroke of luck that he defeated the blood prisoner. Since the blood prisoner was badly injured, he could barely keep up with the fight and he might have been 90% down. It's no surprise that Zen defeated him. Besides, Zen is just a nature creature. I don't think he is a match for us. The master of the He clan sounded certain. Upon hearing his words, the others pondered for a moment. While they had, indeed, been frightened by Zen's power, what the He clan's master pointed out made them reevaluate Zen's true competence. After some arguments, they finally came to the conclusion that it was impossible for a practitioner at grade 3 of the nature level to defeat the blood prisoner at full power. Zen was only able to kill him because his opponent's power had declined severely because of his injuries. Since he's not as powerful as we thought, there's nothing to be afraid of. I'll kill that mongrel. With a trace of malice flashing in his eyes, Chuck proudly declared. Among the clan masters present, he was the most powerful and in turn, he was more confident than the others. With Chuck leading us, we'll definitely kill that mongrel. Ford readily agreed with the others. Yes, we must suppress the Luo clan. Zen and Yan are already so powerful at such a young age. If we don't suppress them, they'll keep getting stronger. We might. Before the He clan's master could finish his words, a sudden chuckle came from outside the room. Since the Crescent building belonged to his clan, Chuck had instructed all the servants not to let anyone else come upstairs. Who's there? He shouted with a frown. It's just funny, seems like I arrived just in time. I was thinking about looking for you individually in your mansions. Now that you're all gathered here, you have made things so much easier for me. Suddenly, a big hole formed on the window and a person jumped in through it. The mysterious man with a handsome face and starry eyes was no one but Zen. Ford's eyes began to twitch with anxiety. Since Zen dared to come, Ford had a strong feeling that something terrible was about to unfold. Hearing Zen's taunt, Chuck couldn't contain his anger. Zen, how dare you come here? He stared at Zen viciously, as if he was about to swallow him alive. With an indifferent look at Chuck and the other clan masters, Zen said, I came here to negotiate. Turning his eyes to Ford, he continued, but I will also be taking a life. Ford's heart sank as he took 2 steps backward under the overwhelming murderous intent in Zen's eyes. Negotiate. If that's true, you wouldn't have jumped through the window. The Chen clan's master had to point it out. Well then. That's my bad. Can I sit here? Zen asked, pointing at an empty chair. Before the masters could even say anything, he nonchalantly took a seat anyway and gestured at them to sit down. The mongrel is too calm, they thought, not knowing what to say. Knowing that Zen was strong, they preferred to negotiate before resorting to force, so they held their tongues and sat down. It was quiet for a moment as Zen poured himself a cup of tea and took a long sip as if they had all the time in the world. Finally, he started explaining, I'm here for two things. First, all of you, representing the top 5 clans in C County, have taken a lot from the Luo clan. So what, do you expect us to just hand them all back over? He clan's master snorted. With a dangerous smile, Zen put 2 fingers up and said, if you give our clan back twice as much as you stole from us, we'll consider the matter settled. Ha! The master of the He clan burst into laughter. Dream on. It's already impossible for me to give the resources back. You can't expect me to give you double. This is ridiculous. Young man, are you joking? With that, the other clan masters burst into laughter as well, much less afraid of Zen than they used to be. In their eyes, killing the already weakened blood prisoner wasn't that big of a deal. Even if Zen hadn't fought him, he would probably have died from his injuries. Ah, you only have this one chance. If you don't answer me now, you'll have to pay the Luo clan back in triple. Ignoring their jeers, Zen said with a serious tone. Who do you think you are? Even without you demanding us to pay you back, I won't be letting you off easily. I'll be taking revenge for my son. With a harsh slam on the table, Chuck made a broad knife appear in his hand. With a wave, a strand of heat was emitted from the knife before it rushed towards Zen. Seeing Chuck making his move, Ford joined him with his half-flute half-dagger weapon. It was a smart choice considering the fact that Zen was no ordinary opponent. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had the guts to get involved in the fight. As soon as Chuck began to attack, Ford knew he had to help so that they could take Zen out immediately. Once Zen was killed, they would have nothing more to worry about. However, there was a world of difference between Zen's skill and theirs. When Zen came out of the fairy palace and became a nature creature, he had already been able to defeat disciples at grade 8 and grade 9 of the nature level. The clan masters in front of him now were much worse than those noble clans, children in terms of talent, resources and weapons. It was no surprise that Zen could easily defeat them. In an instant, a sword appeared in Zen's hand. It was the streamer sword. 2 sword radiances were emitted from the weapon, penetrating the large table and rushing toward Chuck and Ford at incredible speed. Puff, puff, 2 right hands fell to the ground before the other clan masters could even realize what was happening. Blood gushed from Chuck's and Ford's broken arms. After a short while, their wounds stopped bleeding, leaving them in shock. Because it happened so fast, they hadn't felt the pain kick in yet. The masters of the He clan, the Chen clan and the Zhang clan couldn't believe what they had just seen. To think that Chuck and Ford, the most powerful clan masters in C County, lost both their right hands in a single round. If Zen hadn't shown mercy, the 2 would probably have lost their lives. With this in mind, the other 3 clan masters felt very lucky to have been spared. If they joined the other 2 in the attack, they might have lost their hands as well. Zen thrust his sword so incredibly fast that none of them clearly identified his sword method, leaving them at a loss for how to block his attack. What they didn't realize, however, was that even if Zen thrust his sword slowly, they had no chance of winning, as his sword method was based on the principle of simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Even Evan, the #1 disciple of Cloud Sect, couldn't break Zen's attack. How could the clan masters even dream of doing it? Chuck, I killed your son because he tried to kill a member of the Luo clan when they were at the martial arts hall of the Luo clan. Darcy is your son, so he is important to you. Same thing, the member of the Luo clan is important to us. I killed Darcy because he deserved it. Coldly staring at Chuck, Zen raised his voice. At that moment, Chuck felt rather idiotic, like a joke, and he didn't dare try to resist Zen's words. With more power, one can speak more proudly. Now, Chuck realized that although he had reached grade 5 of the nature level with no one in C County who dared challenge him, his achievements were nothing at all in Zen's eyes. Putting 3 fingers up, Zen said, now you have to pay us back in triple. Listen to me, if you don't agree now, you'll have to pay back in quadruple. Pay back 3 times as much. That would mean shelling out so much more than what we got from the Luo clan. We'd have to give up part of our own property worth twice the value of the one we gained from the Luo clan. This is just too much. Chapter 324. Worried about Aura. It was true that Zen's requirements were too much, but what could they do? He had cut off Chuck's and Ford's hands easily just now, and the masters were powerless against him. Not to mention that Zen asked them to return the properties 3 times, even if he asked for 30 times, they still had no other choices. The masters felt ridiculous now. They had guessed how strong Zen was before and planned to fight him by organizing a group. However, Zen broke in right in front of them and subdued all of them with his much stronger power. At that moment, Chuck kept silent, even though Zen had killed his son. He was a wise man as he had put the Huang clan at the front lines of Sea County, but he knew that they couldn't defeat Zen since he was too strong. Although Chuck had more plots and strategies, they would only look foolish in a battle against Zen, a man with such huge strength. Zen had defeated the strongest of Sea County, so who else could stop him? The room remained dead silent as all of them had no other choices and mentally felt so weak. The property that took them great efforts to obtain should be returned intact to the Luo clan, and they were even asked to compensate 3 times its value. The masters found it so hard to accept, so they all kept quiet. Meanwhile, Zen fiddled with the delicate teacup in his hand. The water slowly swirled inside as it was affected by Zen's aura, and none of them knew how he did it. The masters felt the water wave around because of Zen's aura, no doubt. The force Zen gave off gradually increased. It not only contained Zen's strong soul power, but also a bit of malicious aura. The paper-thin window lattices couldn't bear the force and cracked little by little, the sound audible enough for all the people to hear. The malicious aura grew even stronger. They all felt their throats run dry, and their breaths fell short. It was impossible for them to just calmly sit down. If you can't decide in 10 seconds, I'll make it 4 times, Zen said slowly. The water in his teacup seemed to boil as the little drips continuously jumped up and down. I agree, the Zhang clan are willing to return the property of the Luo clan. On top of that, we will also give you 3 times of it as compensation, the master of the Zhang clan exclaimed. He was the first one who couldn't bear it anymore and gave in. We also consent and we will compensate. We will return the mines and gambling business to the Luo clan. The master of the He clan said with gritted teeth. In truth, these masters couldn't tolerate it any longer, but they tried their best to not speak it out. Now that one of them gave in, the rest felt disheartened and did the same as well. In the end, Chuck also nodded his head and said, our Huang clan also agrees to pay the loss of the Luo clan. Okay, you've made the right choice, Zen said with a slight smile on his face. Then his eyes turned to Ford. Although Ford had said yes to him, he had other problems with Ford. Ford Chi, where is my father's sword, the Green Wind Rider sword? Zen stared sharply at him and asked in a low voice. Ford's heart sank. Since he had lost an arm already, he internally hoped that Zen would let him go if he compensated for the Luo clan. However, that seemed to be just a dream now. The other masters looked at him pitifully. Years ago, he, Bryson, and Ken plotted to kill Zen's father. The masters had heard about it more or less. Zen, please, I can return you your father's sword. But since so many years have passed, can you just let it go? We, the clan of Chi, can compensate for it 5 times its value. No, we offer 6 times. Ford said hastily. Ford couldn't almost speak as he realized he was close to death. You're asking me to let it go? Zen asked coldly. In your eyes, my father's death should not be mentioned, like a gasp of the wind. You're the master of the Chi clan. Don't you feel ridiculous saying that? I don't want my father's sword anymore, or your compensation either, but I ask for your life. The immense pressure Ford felt made his legs feel as heavy as lead. However, he still tried his best to run outside. When Zen saw Ford escape, he didn't go after him. However, when Ford opened the door, he saw a girl who stood outside. She had long legs and a beautiful face. She was so pretty that people's hearts beat fast at seeing her, but her eyes held a strong killing intent. Moreover, she held a sword in her hand. Ford felt that the blood-red sword seemed to have consumed countless amounts of people's blood. It was as if it could also absorb his own blood. Who are you? The girl didn't respond. She simply turned around and changed into a storm of malicious aura, then charged at Ford. The malicious storm could break Patrick Pay's Akalanath's shadow. Ford could not bear it at all. He was cut into pieces in a second. Yet, the girl didn't seem to have a real body. Her snow-white skin and strange clothes didn't get stained by Ford's blood at all. When the masters saw the girl at the door, they all became numb with fright. Chuck even forgot to apply pressure to the wound of his broken arm, so he bled profusely. The girl seemed to be more frightening than Zen. How come they never heard of her? Was she Zen's sister, Yan? However, she seemed not. Although she looked pretty as a girl, her eyes were thin and she wasn't human at all. Why would such a strong, non-human being follow Zen? Zen felt satisfied when he saw the scared looks on the masters' faces. He came today not only to ask for the property the Luo clan had lost, but also to build his presence in Sea County. He would go to a bigger world and wasn't sure when he would come back. Yan would do the same as well. These masters weren't strong, but they had great ambitions. If he and Yan left, these people would probably seek out the property of the Luo clan, and there was no one strong enough to protect his clan. That was why Zen had done it himself. He wanted to let them know that he could easily destroy their clans. Now, he seemed to have gotten what he wanted. If the masters were wise enough, they shouldn't cause any troubles for the Luo clan anymore. After that whole fiasco, a great number of people recently visited Luo clan. The first group were the 50 representatives from the government of Sea County. They brought plenty of treasures and came to show their gratitude under the lead of Sea County's highest official. The treasures they brought were the reward for killing the blood prisoner. The government previously announced that anyone who found the blood prisoner would be rewarded greatly. However, there should be more rewards for Zen as he killed the blood prisoner by himself. As for the fact that Bryson had hidden the blood prisoner in the Luo clan, the official seemed to have forgotten it even though the Luo clan should be condemned for that. The official thought he should try his best to please Zen, so of course he didn't dare mention that. Moreover, the deeds of the houses, mines, gambling businesses, and markets from the top 5 clans all went to the Luo clan. Any piece from the deeds could make an ordinary family wealthy, and now they piled up in front of the Luo clan like a small mountain. The members of Luo clan all looked different now. Every one of them felt happy and ecstatic. Who knew that Zen could change the fate of the Luo clan in just a few days? No one could have done it, including Bryson and even Zen's father, Mike. Zen was the only one who had done it in the many generations of the Luo clan. One fine morning 3 days later, the servant who cleaned the gate area of the Luo clan got up early. He fixed himself and after that, grabbed his broom and started to clean the area around the gate. There were too many visitors during these days and he cleaned it every day to keep the gate area neat. In his eyes, the gate was like the face of the Luo clan. He cleaned the area carefully and didn't feel tired at all. He felt energetic, even. As someone who had worked for the Luo clan for dozens of years, he was really glad to see the changes in the Luo clan happen. Besides, the new housekeeper had offered to give all the servants a salary raise. All of their salaries had been tripled. So, why didn't he feel excited about it? All of this was brought about by Zen. The servant carefully swept the ground and made this area as clean as possible. At that moment, a young man walked out of the gate with a girl after him. The young man was handsome. He greeted the servant with a, "Good morning," then the girl after him smiled and nodded at him. The girl was so pretty that it stunned the servant. The servant realized that he forgot to greet them when they had disappeared at the corner of the street. The master of the Luo clan has left in this way, the servant thought with a last wistful glance. Sea Country's problems had almost been solved. Even if Zen wasn't at home, the Luo clan could develop well. The Luo clan had become the top clan of Sea County, except that its members weren't the strongest. The compensation the 5 clans gave was equal to 60% of Sea County. Now, Zen didn't have much to do there and he had more business to do outside the county. That was more important to him. Zen still remembered that Orisu hadn't appeared until the end of the All Peaks competition. The public knew that the princes were vying for the throne of Burning Sky Empire. Except for the Cloud sect that didn't bother to show their preference, the top 7 noble clans and many other small ones had chosen the prince they supported, in hopes of getting great benefits after their chosen prince would ascend to the throne. The whole imperial capital had become quite tense. Orisu was Kane Su's first daughter. As the Sky Princess, she was destined to be involved in this battle. The world of political struggle was cruel, so Zen was highly worried for the proud princess. Was the dignified and noble royal safe? Chapter 325, Feathery Star Hall. The sound of the bell ringing resonated through the beautiful dusk skies. However, the gates of the Burning Sky Palace remained open. As a royal palace, its gates were normally closed at dusk. Anyone would be denied access to and from the palace until the next sunrise. But in the past few days, the closing time of the palace gates was postponed to 9 o'clock in the evening. It was said that the crown prince was quite exasperated about it and even released an imperial order requiring the gates of the royal palace to be closed before dusk. However, this crowned prince had apparently lost his power and could not make his people fulfill even his simple requests. He was like a tiger without its fangs. The gates of the palace would remain open until late hours. The members of the high society such as the heads of the noble clans and the military generals would access the palace gates freely as if they were in their own home. A lot of people already learned that the crowned prince was on hot waters by observing the closing time of the palace gates. Perhaps it was only a matter of time before the crowned prince would be deposed. Now, the third prince and the seventh prince were eager to act. But since each was conscious about the other's strength, they had to be discreet, which allowed the current crowned prince to keep his title for now. However, once a winner between the third prince and the seventh prince was determined, the ending of the crowned prince was inevitable. Recently, the third prince frequently held feasts in his feathery star hall, while the seventh prince hosted his in the fiery moon mansion. They invited a wide range of guests to their places, trying to draw more people over to their side. And that was the reason why the gates of the Burning Sky Palace started to close at very late hours. Zen did a rough investigation about the current situation of the Burning Sky Palace. Although there were a lot of issues remained unraveled, all Zen wanted at this critical moment was to see Aura. And as to who would be the emperor of the Burning Sky Empire, Zen could not care less. He finally arrived at the palace gate. But before he could step on the other side, several imperial guards blocked his way. "Stop right there. This is the imperial palace. We need to report your arrival before you can step in. Please state your name and the person you want to visit. Hand me your visiting card as well," an imperial guard asked Zen dryly. Normally, no one would have the guts to go through the palace gates unless he was a representative of certain influential association. Therefore, that imperial guard was already being polite to Zen given that he had noticed that the latter was merely at the third grade of the nature level. Zen greeted him with cupped fists and said, "I'm here to visit the Sky Princess. I don't have a visiting card, but here is my disciple card of Cloud Sect." Zen Luo. The imperial guard glanced at Zen's disciple card. Even though Cloud Sect was an A-list sect for learning the martial arts, its outer disciples as well as some inner disciples were not allowed to access the Burning Sky Palace. However, Zen was an exception to the rule. After being the first place at the All Peaks competition held by Cloud Sect, Zen became famous not only within Cloud Sect but also amongst the assorted noble clans. Now, even the common people knew his name. That imperial guard was a man of the third prince, and he was aware that the third prince was in badly need of real talents. Cloud Sect was the largest and the most influential organization in the Burning Sky Empire. It was said that once Cloud Sect meddled in, it would be up to Kenneth who would be the next emperor of the Burning Sky Empire. However, this time, Cloud Sect did not pick a side in this political struggle. The head, elders, and saints of Cloud Sect all kept their lips tight on the matter of the throne competition and avoided any involvement in it. Thus, neither the third nor the seventh prince obtained the support of Cloud Sect despite their efforts. Though the third prince was disappointed at this fact, he was still comforted that neither of them had the upper hand. Now that there was no way to cozy up to the core members of Cloud Sect, the third prince began to target its disciples. When the All Peaks competition was over, he delivered invitation cards to the top 100 disciples on the Cloud Sect ranking list. Zen, the number one on the Cloud Sect ranking, was certainly invited. Actually, the third prince regarded him as the most important talent he must win over. After all, many of the top 100 who came from noble clans had already taken a side, such as Patrick from the Pei clan. Given that the Pei clan already sided with the seventh prince, there was no hope for the third prince to befriend Patrick. By contrast, Zen was one of the grassroots having no noble clan to back him up. But despite that, he had taken first place at the All Peaks competition. With such strength and talent, he must have a promising future. Naturally, he became a major target of the third prince. But to the third prince's disappointment, it appeared that Zen immediately left Cloud Sect after the All Peaks competition. He had sent his men to Zen's place hoping to invite him over, but they failed to see the disciple there. And right now, upon hearing Zen's name, the heart of that imperial guard thumped aggressively. If I bring Zen to the third prince, I might receive a huge credit. Therefore, the imperial guard put on a more cordial and courteous face. In his eyes, Zen had become a huge prize. "I can't believe it. You're Mr. Luo. This way, please." The Imperial Guard welcomed Zen with a smile. Zen looked quite baffled at the sudden change of attitude of the Imperial Guard. The third prince wasn't the only one who placed his men among the Imperial Guards, the seventh prince made the same move. If Zen was discovered by a man of the seventh prince as well, he would probably be dragged into the fight of the two princes. After all, as they were competing to grow their influence, similar incidents had occurred more than once or twice. Although Zen did not know what the Imperial Guard was getting into, it was convenient to have somebody usher him through the burning sky palace that he had never visited before. Thus, he followed the Imperial Guard and stepped onto a winding passage inside the royal palace. After a while, Zen saw a brilliantly illuminated hall ahead of him. Voices fluttered into his ears, as well as the gongs and drums blending with the opera singing. As he was walking along the hall, he saw a plaque saying, "Feathery Star Hall," hanging on the eave. "This is where the Sky Princess is?" Zen asked the Imperial Guard, his brow furrowed. The Imperial Guard smiled and answered, "Mr. Luo, you'll know once you go in. If you want to see Her Highness, you will need the permission of the man inside this hall." The permission of the man in this hall? Who was the man? But before Zen could ask, that Imperial Guard yelled at a servant of the Feathery Star Hall, "Quick, report the arrival of Zen Luo from Cloud Sect." Soon, a throng of people marched out of the Feathery Star Hall. The man taking the lead was wearing a golden jade crown and a yellow robe decorated with gold thread boa designs. As he rushed up to Zen, his every move vibrated an air of superiority, as though he was born to be a ruler. Even though he deliberately tried to stay humble, others felt like he was gazing down upon them. What an amazing surprise! Zen is here. Please forgive me for not welcoming you myself. It's a great pleasure to finally meet you in person. The man greeted Zen beamingly. "And you are?" Zen scowled, his face sort of sullen. He was here for Aura but instead met with this stranger. "I am Ray, the third prince. Today I happen to have set up a feast inside. Zen, please come in." At this moment, Ray was overjoyed. He had sent out invitations multiple times to Zen but failed to have his presence. So, he was surprised to see Zen visit him on the latter's own accord. The third prince. Whenever the ordinary people encountered some royal member, they would instantly be on their hands and knees to pay their respect. But practitioners of the martial arts did not have to stick to that rigid norms. It was noted that in the world of martial arts, only the strong were respected. So even though the emperor owned thousands of troops, he would not be given any different treatment. He could easily be beheaded by any strong warrior if his strength was weak. Take Nile, the sixth prince, as an example. He also participated in the All Peaks competition but was soon eliminated halfway through the contest. He did not get any preferential treatment because of his royal identity. Sensing the over-welcoming spirit Ray gave him, Zen knew that the third prince was dragging him into his league. But Zen had no intention to meddle with the political tussle in the Burning Sky Palace. He immediately clarified, "Your Highness, I did not come to the Burning Sky Palace for you. I'm here for the Sky Princess." Hearing Zen's words, Ray's face slightly hardened. Meanwhile, the crowd surrounding Ray began to shout, "It's such a great honor for you that our third prince invited you in. No one cares who you're here for. I have never met such an arrogant brat before. His Highness already debased himself to greet you out here, but you refused to go in. Who do you think you are?" Ray motioned those men to quiet down, and they instantly fell silent. Surprisingly, the smile on his face was broader. "Her Highness is resting in her Shine Hall. If you want to see her, I can bring her here to you." Zen shot a few cold looks at the men behind Ray. Most of them were at the nature level, while 3 of them had just entered the illuminating soul realm. Then, he replied to Ray's straight-faced, "That'll be great. I'll wait here for Her Highness." After that, Zen followed the third prince into the Feathery Star Hall. Chapter 326, Challenging Zen. As the third prince of the Burning Sky Palace, Ray held a grand banquet today to entertain guests, and everyone who showed up was known for their fame and prestige. As soon as Zen stepped into the grand hall, he immediately sensed several people with powerful life vitality, who, as far as he could tell, were masters of the illuminating soul realm. "Offer Zen a seat," the third prince immediately commanded after he and Zen entered the hall. Instantly, 6 or 7 maids showed up, walking briskly with small steps. And then a square table with fresh fruits and a variety of meats and a chair were placed in front of Zen. Since Ray promised to bring Aura to his banquet, Zen sat down and waited patiently. As for the prince, if he was truly determined to win Zen's support, the warrior decided he would handle the matter carefully. He didn't quite expect Ray to act so quickly. As soon as he sat down, Ray walked back to his seat and raised his jade cup with a smile and said aloud, "Zen, you won first place in the Cloud Sect's All Peaks competition, and I've always wanted to see you since then. But you were not in Cloud Sect during the past few days. Thus, I never got the chance to meet you. Today, you have come to my humble palace, and I am deeply honored. So, I'd like to propose a toast for you. I will drink first to show my respect for you." The majority of Ray's banquet guests heard the prince's respectful words, but many could not hide their skepticism. These people were not from the Cloud Sect. Instead, a number of them came from the top noble clans and were strong enough. Also, some were even at the level of illuminating Soul Realm. However, the prince had never honored anyone in public like that before. Although the championship of the All Peaks competition held by Cloud Sect was a prestigious title, these guests from the top noble clans had limited appreciation for it. Since they were never a part of Cloud Sect, these people would never have a clear perception of the strength of the disciples from this group. In their view, Zen was simply an insignificant guy at the third grade of the nature level. The third prince is only being polite to you, showing his considerate and kind character. I didn't expect you to be so arrogant about it. Who do you think you are? One of them thought furiously after noticing Zen's hesitation. At that moment, all the rest of the guests shared the same thought. As Zen watched Ray raise his head and drink every drop of wine in his jade cup in one gulp, he hesitated, which the other guests interpreted as a sign of arrogance. But the young warrior knew he could not embarrass Ray in front of so many people. As a show of appreciation and respect, Zen also raised his cup and drank the wine in the same way Ray did. However, he felt the need to clarify some things with the prince. "Your Highness, I wish to apologize. But this time, I really came to visit Sky Princess, and not you." As he uttered the words, the faces of many of Ray's banquet guests grew even darker. "Who do you think you are? Why do you think you have been offered a seat at the Feathery Star Hall, huh? It is only because the prince thinks very highly of you and respects you." One of them spat out with disdain. "I have never seen anyone so arrogant and act in such a manner. Do you know where you are right now? The royal palace. You don't know it clearly, do you, hick?" Another guest burst out angrily. "There is nothing special about being a disciple of the Cloud Sect. He doesn't even know the basic rules of the palace. How can you be so arrogant? A champion is supposed to act this way. I think Cloud Sect's reputation at this point has been unearned." A third guest huffed. Even Zen was taken aback by the reaction and felt as if his words stirred a hornet's nest. One after the other, guests admonished him. To begin with, they had not been pleased with Zen's presence at the banquet. But what drew their ire was that he said his purpose was not to visit the prince but to see the princess after Ray proposed a toast in his honor and drank all the wine as a sign of respect. Did this kind of embarrassment not deserve being reprimanded in public? Ray smiled lightly after hearing his guest's indignant remarks. But, he was quite shrewd and well-bred. In his view, powerful and talented men were naturally proud, and Zen's behavior just now was not something unexpected. "It doesn't matter," Ray said. "Anyone who comes to my Feathery Star Hall is my guest. But your Highness, while he may be your guest, he does not have the right to be rude." One of them argued. "Yes, I agree with you. If indeed he is that strong, we'll say nothing and let this go. But I'm afraid that while outwardly he may be strong, inside, he is weak and is merely pretending to be a powerful man," another guest added. The nearly violent rebuke continued until a man in white stood up from the table and said to Ray with his fists cupped to show respect, "Your Highness, since everyone is in high spirits, I would like to compete against Zen to bring some entertainment for the guests, as well as learn from him." "That would be nice. After listening to the opera and watching beautiful ladies dancing, we feel quite bored to have drinks only. A martial arts competition would add a lot of fun to drinking." The guest who spoke was thrilled at the prospect of the competition to stir things up in the banquet. Nodding, Ray said, "Since everyone is so excited and looking forward to having fun, I don't want to be the bad guy who spoils everyone's expectations. So Zen, what do you think of the proposal for a competition?" A slight frown formed in Zen's face, and he didn't immediately reply. Truthfully, he was feeling somewhat helpless. How could he not see through Ray's tricks? It was apparent that supporting a proposal for a competition was meant to test Zen's real strength. But he wasn't even there to attend the third prince's banquet. He came to see Aura. Suddenly, for no reason, he was being asked to fight with someone. And the disciple was in no mood for something as dull as a competition. Seeing Zen's silence, the man in white sneered and said coldly, "Are you afraid of competing with me, Zen? Afraid of being defeated and losing face? Anyone who comes as a guest of the third prince is one with real skills, and if you lose, then you will have to get out of here." "That's right, it's not easy to be a guest of your highness," one of the guests roared. "The third prince never treats guests who are losers." Another one spoke up excitedly. It was hard not to sigh once Zen saw the excited and indignant stares of the guests who all looked at him as a competitor. By now, the third prince should have gained the support of several powerful clans, the most important of which were a few top noble clans, including guests attending the banquet today. But the resources offered by the third prince were bound to be limited. If Zen was involved, they were afraid that he would scramble for part of Rei's resources. As a result, these people regarded him as their common enemy. And the third prince allowed these people to provoke and challenge him to test his real strength, as well as to determine if Zen was worthy of being recruited as a member of his pool of talents. If Zen really doesn't want to participate in the competition, then let's just drop it. Since everyone has come to my Feathery Star Hall, all of you are regarded as a friend. Please don't ruin the harmonious relationship among you guys over a small matter, Rei declared. He simpered after speaking. While his statement might have sounded as if he wanted to help Zen with his present predicament, there was a hidden agenda behind it. He wanted to goad Zen into agreeing to the challenge. The man in white shook his head and huffed, "Since the prince has said so, then forget it. It's just so boring here." "So, the Cloud Sect's disciple is such a wimp," another guest said. The insults kept coming, and as they were getting dirtier and harsher, Zen furrowed his brows tighter. Then an idea clicked in his brain, and with a smile, he said, "Since everyone is in high spirits, and I have nothing to do here, it won't be too much trouble for me if I accept the challenge and provide some entertainment for you guys." As soon as Zen finished talking, the man in white suddenly turned his head, and a trace of excitement flickered in his eyes. "Good, I'm glad you choose not to bear the insults and accept my challenge. I was so afraid that you might swallow the humiliation and do nothing about it," he thought. As a guest of the third prince, the man in white couldn't be more aware of what Rei meant, and he would surely try his best to figure out Zen's real strength during the fight. Clapping his hands, Rei declared with glee, "Good. I sincerely appreciate your participation and the fun you would bring to us. To add more excitement to today's competition, I'd like to offer 1,000 cubic crystals as a reward for anyone who could beat Zen." The prince laughed as he made the offer. As expected, his guests at the banquet, all of whom were warriors, immediately became excited. 1,000 cubic crystals were definitely a huge sum of money for those warriors who were not born from the top noble clans. It was a rather sneaky trick by Rei, as he was now encouraging these warriors to take turns in fighting against Zen, hoping to tire him out and eventually defeat him. In his mind, Zen sneered. "What, so they will take turns to fight against me?" Zen was not afraid of having several opponents. His endurance was far beyond that of ordinary warriors as his body possessed the function of a spiritual weapon. Moreover, since Zen decided to participate in the competition, he would not only defeat his opponents but also terrify them with his tough moves. After a few rounds of competition, he was sure not many of the warriors would dare to challenge him. After a while, they cleared the center of the Feathery Star Hall to make way for the competition. Once there was ample space, the man in white began to float in the air. Although warriors could fly after entering the level of Illuminating Soul Realm, there were differences in their flying techniques. In the case of the man in white, his flying method was elegant and flexible as he moved naturally and swiftly like a swallow. After circling in the air, he gently landed on the carpet and stared at Zen with an unmistakable challenge in his eyes. On the other hand, Zen only sauntered towards the carpet, his pace neither fast nor slow, but was very calm. "Remember my name," the man in white with his fists cupped, told Zen. "I'm Doug Joe. I hate people who pretend to be very important personalities in this world. So when I meet such people, I have to beat the heck out of them," he said gruffly. Poof, it was hard not to laugh as soon as Zen heard Doug's words. Dressed in white, Doug looked gentle and elegant and was good-looking and talented, but his words were so crude. The immense contrast elicited an unexpected burst of laughter from the Cloud Sect's disciple. I hope you can still laugh aloud later," Doug said in anger. Using his hands, he started to spread out a little dark red life vitality. The life vitality kept growing through his fingers, and he eventually condensed, then transformed it into 10 long claws. At the same time, 2 wings, which were also produced by condensed life vitality, appeared in Doug's back. Seeing the changes in Doug's appearance, Zen raised his eyebrows slightly and thought quickly, since Doug is a guest of the third prince, he probably has some special skills. He was likely contemplating a kind of flying bird and then transformed his life vitality into claws and wings. So it must be his speed that's exceptional. As Zen stood to reflect on this, Doug's wings flapped, and he began to charge towards the Cloud Sect's disciple so fast that the only thing the audience could see was a string of shadows moving swiftly. Chapter 327, Horizons and Sensibility. Today, they got together at the prince's banquet to promote their relationship, and the fight was to enliven the atmosphere. However, many of them were infuriated, because they thought Zen was too arrogant and rampant. Seeing that Doug Joe made his move to fight Zen, all others exclaimed loudly. Doug independently invented body tactics of his own. He called his body tactics after his own name. Using these tactics, Doug can move and dodge elusively that his opponents can't track where he is. Just wait and see. He will enlighten Zen's horizon, and Zen will know what martial arts achievements truly are. It will be better if Zen bleeds. He will clearly realize that no subordinate of the third prince is weak. I agree. I hope everything you say will happen. At the third grade of nature level, Zen will be unable to react against Doug's assault. Thus, his cultivations are not worth mentioning at all for Doug. It was believed that Doug moved quite fast. In addition, he was as agile as a flying swallow. He could move from one place to another, and it would be extremely difficult to anticipate where he was. Zen didn't move and remained calm like a mountain, his eyes squinting and trying to find out where on earth Doug was. Since his opponent fought him barehanded, Zen didn't use his sword either. He swung a fist at Doug immediately when he detected the infinite residual shadows left by Doug from his swift movements. At this critical moment, Doug's wings suddenly trembled. He moved along an inconceivable trajectory, thus dodging away from Zen's attack. Soon enough, his sharp claws scratched Zen's right side. He got hit. The claws left 3 little marks on Zen's clothes. Well done. Doug's move is awesome and illusionary like shadows. That guy can't counterattack against Doug at all. In the beginning, I was not sure how powerful he was. But as the #1 disciple of Cloud Sect that week, how shameful. Cloud Sect, the holy place for acquiring martial arts. This will be a big laughingstock. Doug didn't even give full play to his strengths. Amidst those people's scornful looks, someone stood out and spoke up for Zen. It was Gale Huo. Like Zen, Gale was also a disciple of Cloud Sect and ranked top on the Skyrath Peak. However, he was born into a poor family, so he had been drawn by the third prince to his side. Despite his extraordinary strengths, he considerably lacked resources for cultivation. It was the third prince who could offer him all these resources, so he chose to stand by this prince's side. But since he could no longer withstand others' contempt for Zen, Gale, who had ever taken part in the All Peaks competition, retorted while shaking his head, "As you have mentioned, Doug hasn't given full play to his strengths. Zen didn't either. Disciples of Cloud Sect are not as weak as you think. You can change my family name if Doug could defeat Zen. Gale, how can you boost an outsider's morale? Is Zen really that strong?" Someone said with great anger. "I am not boosting his morale. What I said was based on facts," replied Gale with his gaze fixated on Zen. In the recent All Peaks competition, Zen's performances were amazing and breathtaking. Deeply impressed by how Zen defeated his opponents in the All Peaks competition, Gale could hardly forget about Zen's strength. On the other hand, it was Doug who was more shocked than anyone else at this moment. The dark red sharp claws in his hands were condensed by his life vitality. Using these claws, he initially thought that he could tear up or at least leave 3 deep notches on Zen's shoulder. However, Doug discovered that Zen's body was as hard as a steel plate. But the comparison didn't make sense, because even a steel plate could be torn apart by his claws. It was difficult to describe how strong Zen's body was. For the sake of describing it, it could be said that Zen's body was as hard as some high-grade defense spiritual weapons. How could a body be that strong? Was it possible that this guy was a monster? Doug was not a disciple of Cloud Sect but a vagrant cultivator. In the eastern region, cultivators generally developed in 3 paths. The most excellent ones such as Zen and Rocher naturally joined Cloud Sect. Some cultivators had joined the Imperial Army and improved themselves through blood and fire. Cultivators such as John, Floyd, and Spencer were soldiers of the Imperial Army. The weakest cultivators were born as vagrants. They lagged far behind the disciples of Cloud Sect in terms of tactics they learned. Unlike the Imperial Army, these cultivators were not always on the verge of death. Even though they had reached the illuminating soul realm, their strengths were just mediocre. They differed more significantly from disciples of Cloud sect in terms of horizons and sensibility. For instance, Doug was totally confused and didn't know what he should do next when he discovered that he couldn't completely defuse Zen's body defense using his shrewd blow, although he had given Zen a heavy blow at a fast pace. Doug's move failed because of his poor sensibility, inadequate inheritance of cultivation methods, and 2 unitary assaults. The best examples of sensibility were Roche and Patrick. When both of them discerned that Zen was physically overbearing, they changed their tactics to deal with him. Dick, on the other hand, could adapt his ultimate skill righteousness song when he was challenged with Zen's demonic phantoms. Except his wings and sharp claws, Doug really couldn't think of a better way to unravel the mystery of Zen's body, which was like a spiritual weapon. Doug was upset about the current situation. Now, he found himself in a dilemma that he could hardly retreat. He had actively provoked Zen, but at this moment, he was incapable of breaking down Zen's body defense. He realized that he would bring great shame to himself if he failed. Doug, come on, go ahead, what are you afraid of? Go for his torso next time. Doug was deeply infuriated in his mind upon hearing those urges. Dang it, you all do nothing but yell on the side. Try it yourself if you can. At this moment, Doug wanted to surrender. However, he had a strong feeling that the third prince was watching his fight with Zen. If he acted over rashly, the prince would surely be disappointed. Thus, Doug could do nothing but grit his teeth and dash towards Zen again. This time, he gave his best and harnessed all his strength. At last, he ran so swiftly like a wind that his entire body moved in a spiral motion with an intent to strangle Zen. Doug's spiral. This was also a tactic created by Doug himself. Staring at the direction of Doug's spiral, Zen slightly nodded. This martial tactic seemed to be a little like the sword dance of Lily. It could be reckoned as prototype of the sword dance. Nevertheless, there might be considerable differences in might between this martial tactic and the sword dance. Lily drove a spiral dependent upon the malicious aura, whereas Doug relied upon his own life vitality to impel the spiral. While Doug's spiral approached him, Zen didn't dodge. After his battle with Patrick, the third spiritual texture had appeared on Zen's body, and from that moment on, his body had become as mighty as a top-grade mysterious weapon. As a result, it was totally impossible for Doug to hurt Zen's body. Anticipating that Doug's 10 sharp claws were going to strangle him, Zen suddenly stretched out his arms and made a pose to defend himself from the sharp claws. All bystanders burst into laughter as soon as they saw Zen's defense pose. Zen was already scratched once, but it seems that he forgot what it felt like. Doug's claws are extremely sharp. Even a thick steel plate can be drilled and penetrated in a flash by Doug's sharp claws when combined with his spiral. Am I right? This time, Zen's arm will be badly injured or perhaps broken. I have never seen such a stupid cultivator before. Can you tell me how he has been listed number 1 in Cloud sect? When all bystanders were indulged in their reckless gloat and discussion, Doug's spiral finally swirled around for Zen's arm. Biff, 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 biff. But to the bystanders' surprise, Zen's arm wasn't smashed by Doug's spiral. Doug's claws stopped on Zen's arm and couldn't penetrate Zen's skin at all. At the sight of this, the smile on all bystanders' faces vanished. All guests of the banquet had the same thought with Doug, is Zen really a monster? In general, one would be deemed physically strong if he had overbearing physical strengths. However, one's physical strengths were limited no matter how strong he or she was. After all, human bodies were only covered by a thin layer of skin, beneath which there was flesh. A beast's body, on the other hand, was covered by a thick and hard shell. Human bodies couldn't be that rigid. It was not until today that they had realized that one's body could be so strong and rigid that it couldn't be hurt at all. Zen proved that for them when he stood there still even after withstanding a forceful attack. This was no longer a mere fight but a taunt. Only if one's strength was much greater than his opponent's could he taunt his opponent. As they noticed the flat smile on Zen's face, many guests understood that Zen had never cared about their opinions because all their strengths meant nothing at all for Zen. Meanwhile, Ray's eyes gleamed. From his current situation, he realized that Zen was really a rare talent. This made him more determined to rack his brain to recruit him. At the very beginning, Ray didn't show much curiosity about Zen's strengths and all he cared about was the latter's reputation. In his opinion, if he could have Zen, the top disciple of Cloud sect, knock-on effects would occur in that sect. Zen was just like a key for Ray to develop sound relationships with Cloud Sect. But now, Ray realized that Zen was also like a sharp sword. Besides, Zen was only 17 years old. With his strength and everything he had achieved so far, he would have a bright future. Chapter 328, Two Pupils. Doug's spiral attack only lasted for 1 second before Zen smashed it with one punch that ended the fight. Their sparring in this kind of occasion didn't need to be brutal. The winner would be decided when he prevailed over his rival, and Zen was showing overwhelming superiority now. Though he was defeated, Doug was sincerely convinced that Zen possessed great power. His eyes were filled with reverence as he stared at Zen. Zen hadn't used any weapon or any life vitality during the fight, and he hadn't even moved a step from his original position. With that, Doug was convinced that Zen's real strength was unfathomable. Despite his frustration, Doug felt a yearning for the Cloud Sect. He was a newcomer to the illuminating soul realm, and he thought he could still join in the Cloud Sect if he became stronger. But he didn't know that a talent like Zen was quite rare to see in the Cloud Sect. In the competition from 3 years ago, the only talent who had attracted much attention was Evan. This year, Cloud Sect was fortunate enough to witness several talents in the All Peaks competition. Roche, Patrick, and Zen were some of the talents from this year's All Peaks competition. Please forgive me, Your Highness. I let you down. I was defeated in this challenge, Doug turned to Ray and said respectfully with cupped hands. Ray nodded and said, Don't mind it, Doug. A talent like Zen is rare to see even in 1,000 years, so it's not a shame to be defeated by him. In 1,000 years? Is it just an exaggeration? Many people thought to themselves, doubtful about Ray's words. After all, there were millions of people who could be born into the eastern region in 1,000 years, and it was not possible that only one of them could be this gifted. Although Zen had defeated Doug quite easily, there were still many cultivators at Ray's disposal who were much stronger than Doug that felt ill-affected. Your Highness, please allow me to fight with him. A man called Perry Song stood up and offered to fight Zen after Doug returned to his seat. This was a strapping, intimidating man who looked like a vicious bandit with a black patch over his left eye. Zen couldn't tell whether it was just an ornament or was to cover a blind eye. Do as you wish, Ray nodded in approval. He then looked at Zen. As far as Ray was concerned, everything in this world had a price and could be bought. He was aware that Zen showed antipathy towards him and wasn't willing to join his camp. Nonetheless, he believed that Zen would change his mind if he could provide the latter with enough benefits. Zen was undoubtedly a great talent, yet he still needed many resources to strengthen himself before he became powerful enough. The Cloud Sect might do its utmost to satisfy Zen's needs, yet a refiner would always try to get as many resources as possible. And Ray planned to use this fact to draw Zen over to his side. Ray had taken part in the competition for the throne with his control over a great number of resources. Even the Crown Prince would seem poor in comparison with him. And Khan, the 7th Prince, possessed far fewer resources compared to Ray. Zen, show me what your real strength is now. The stronger you are, the more I will consider offering you, Ray thought to himself. The ferocious look on Perry's face twitched as he stood in front of Zen. He took out a saber from the sheath hanging on his waist. It was a black saber which appeared to be extraordinary. Hey, young man, you have managed to hog the limelight with your strong body, right? Can you defend yourself merely with your body from my saber? Perry asked with a cold sneer. No, Zen said emotionlessly as he shook his head. Even though his body was already a top-grade spiritual weapon, he wouldn't just stand there and get slashed like an idiot for no reason. His brief, unexpected reply left Perry dumbfounded. Then show your real strength in front of me now. With that, Perry jumped into the air and slashed the black saber at Zen with unstoppable momentum. Earth-breaking slash. Facing Perry's aggressive attack, Zen showed no intention of dodging it at all. With his feet standing firmly at his original position, he took out his streamer sword. With his arm against his chest, he turned his palm outwards and lifted the sword over his head horizontally. The basic swordsmanship, Ray's sword. This was the skill in the basic swordsmanship which could be used to defend and to reverse the attack at the same time. Zen didn't use this sword skill when he fought with Evan in the past because it was half defensive and half offensive. It was used to fend off the rival's sword while returning with a slash. Evan's falling flower's sword attack was too quick. Even though Zen could defend one attack from him, he could barely catch up with the succeeding attacks. But Perry's case was different. Obviously, Perry's attack pattern was violent yet simple. Although it looked overwhelming and powerful, it had no flexibility at all and could only beat the enemy with one attack at full strength. You want to defend my black saber with this slender sword? You're nuts. You'll surely be defeated this time. Seeing Zen use the raised sword of the basic swordsmanship, Perry hesitated for a second whether he should exert all his strength or not. If Zen couldn't defend his attack, it was very likely that his saber would cut Zen's sword in half and then his body. However, when he saw the aloof look on Zen's face, instead of reducing his strength, he added more power into his hands. There was a violent and savage aura surrounding him, and it seemed as if he would really break the earth with this slash. Bang! With a loud bump, Perry's saber knocked heavily on Zen's sword but didn't cut it broken as he expected. His violent attack had no influence on either Zen or his sword. Unexpectedly, Zen pushed Perry's saber away with a spinning of his body and then quickly pushed his sword towards Perry. Perry was taken aback by Zen's counterattack. Contrary to his expectation, Zen had such great power that he not only fended off his attack but also returned him with one stab. Perry wondered, how is it possible that he defuses my attack so easily with the basic swordsmanship? In desperation, Perry tumbled to a side hurriedly to avoid Zen's sword. His swarthy face turned pale as he got up from the ground. Why is the basic swordsmanship so powerful in his hand? At that moment, Perry couldn't help but doubt whether all the years he had spent on his saber were wasted. If it wasn't the case, he couldn't understand why Zen could defend his attack so easily with the basic swordsmanship. Ray suddenly clapped his hands at his seat. He praised, I have heard the story that you defeated Evan merely with the basic swordsmanship. To be honest, I had high doubts about it when I first heard it. But now, seeing it with my own eyes, I know it's true. I really appreciate your simple way of using the sword. Many sword refiners who were present also nodded in agreement. There was something special about Zen's basic swordsmanship. Everyone had learned about the basic swordsmanship as a required course, but no one would dare to employ it in a fight. Maybe Zen was the only one in this world who had done that. Though being praised by Ray, Zen still had no expression on his face. He stood still where he was and never moved one step. As for Perry, it was hard for him to accept the fact that his earth-breaking slash was fended off by Zen's raised sword so easily. Perry was a very righteous man, but one of his shortcomings was that he was usually too proud to admit failure, and today was quite a big failure, especially in front of a large audience. He fell silent for a while. Gritting his teeth tightly, he eventually lifted his hand and took off the black patch covering his left eye. It was the first time that Perry would take off his patch in front of other people, the followers of Ray. Most people had thought that it was a blind eye, so they never asked about it to avoid irritating Perry. However, to their surprise, Perry's left eye was in good health. There was only one odd thing about it. 2 pupils. Some called out in astonishment. There were 2 pupils in Perry's left eye, and it looked weird. It was also the first time for Zen to see a man with 2 pupils in one eye. 2 pupils where one pupil appeared larger than the other. It was said that a man with 2 pupils in one eye could see through his enemies and find out their weaknesses. But it was hard to say whether the rumor was real or not, because people with 2 pupils in one eye was rarely seen by others. But since Perry showed his eye in this circumstance, it must have some special functions. Zen held his sword tightly in his hand but remained extremely calm. He didn't think it as a bad thing if Perry could really find out his weakness, because it would help him know better about himself. Perry's left eye narrowed a bit before radiating a ray of faint light which shot towards Zen and covered the latter's body. It was true that Perry's 2 pupils could help him find out his enemy's weaknesses. The only downside of this function was that it would cause a severe headache for many days after he used it. That was because it required a powerful soul, while Perry had no means of strengthening his soul. For that troublesome reason, Perry never used it under normal circumstances. But today was different because he didn't want to suffer from a dismal failure in front of Zen. He had lost his face because of Zen, and he wanted to earn his reputation back. However, he didn't expect what he saw as he glanced through Zen's body with his left eye. He was totally stunned. What on earth has happened to this young man? He wondered. Chapter 329. A lesson learned the hard way. Perry's left eye would normally see 2 colors once he scanned a person's body, black and white. The black part would indicate a person's weakness. Everybody had their own weaknesses. Even the most unusual defensive cultivation method also had Achilles' heel. If the attack was focused on one's Achilles' heel, one would surely be in critical condition. But Perry's eye could only see white all over Zen's body. There was no hint of black part at all. The same thing had happened before. Perry could see the weakness of the opponent through his decoria, but it wasn't the case all the time. If the opponent was too powerful like the masters at the top of the illuminating soul realm or a high-ranked defensive weapon, he wouldn't be able to see through. But Zen was just at grade 3 of the nature level. So why couldn't Perry see through him? Could it be that Zen didn't have any weakness? Or because of his current cultivation level, he couldn't find Zen's weak point? Perry was having a hard time analyzing the situation. Perry's diplocoria was a powerful talent. Unfortunately, he didn't have a high-level cultivating talent or a powerful soul. If his cultivation could reach the same level as Dick or Jill at Cloud Sect, with his diplocoria, he probably could advance at an equal pace with Rocher. After he was accepted by Prince Ray, he cultivated himself with all kinds of panacea and managed with an effort to enter the illuminating soul realm. But with a shaky foundation, the method to forcefully promote his cultivation made it hard for him to make progress to reach a higher level in the future, so he would probably stay at the illuminating soul realm all his life. But he mostly relied on his diplocoria talent, which was also the reason that he was valued by Prince Ray. However, he couldn't see through his opponent today, which he found weird and alarming at the same time. What Perry didn't know was that after Zen cultivated his body to a top-grade spiritual weapon, his weakness became too little. Perry could only see the weak point of a cultivator who was not on a higher level than the illuminating soul realm, or the weapon which was under a low-grade spiritual weapon. Perry, what are you doing? Haven't you seen this guy's weakness clearly yet? If you see clearly, just go and fight. Someone shouted impatiently. Most of the guests present at the banquet knew about Perry's ability. His diplocoria was quite capable and he could see through the opponent's weakness at first glance. Any cultivator would be at a disadvantage if his weaknesses were visible to his opponent. Everyone was convinced about his talent in the beginning. They thought that Perry would go ballistic instantly after he took off his eye patch. But unexpectedly, he stared blankly at Zen. What happened? After a long while, Perry saluted to Zen. Sir, you are a special person. I am convinced. After saying, Perry returned to his seat without looking back. What's going on? Perry just admitted defeat, but they have just exchanged one move. Perry is not a coward. If there is a slim chance to turn the tables, he will insist. If he admits defeat, perhaps he is really inferior to the guy. Why does Zen deserve Perry's compliment? Ray was also surprised. Perry's strength was not the most powerful among all his guests, but it was difficult to find another talent with the same diplocoria as his in the world. If his cultivation was not too weak, he could absolutely be one of Ray's assistants. Perry, can you explain why you admitted defeat? Ray asked with a smile. Perry picked up a liquor cup on the table and chugged the liquor down, then replied, I can't see through Zen's weakness. If my guess is right, he has a perfect body. A perfect body? Ray was stunned. The people were also startled to hear what Perry said. This evaluation was too much. How could someone so perfect exist in the world? At most times, perfect was just an adjective. But for Zen to have a perfect body, it seemed like a big joke for everyone. I can't find any weakness in his body given that his cultivation is only grade 3 of the nature level. Your Highness, do you consider it as a perfect body? Perry asked in reply cautiously. Ray understood Perry's words and nodded. When he looked at Zen again, he got excited. What Perry said might not be true, but he would still bring in such a person as his subordinate. Your Highness, please allow me to fight against him. A silver-haired young man stood up. But this time, Zen said, Your Highness, I come here to see Sky Princess. He was not afraid of fighting against many people one by one. In fact, until now, Zen hadn't moved a single step or shown any of his real strength. However, he didn't come here to fight against Prince Ray's subordinates. I understand, Zen, I have sent someone to take Sky Princess here, but it will take some time. This man just wants to learn from you. Please accept it, Ray smiled. He had foreseen this point. Anyway, he was the only one who could bring Aura here. If he wanted to forbid it, Zen wouldn't see her. Zen showed a long face and didn't say anything, but there was some annoyance in his eyes. If he wouldn't beat them hard, these guys probably wouldn't stop. While thinking, Zen smiled, If that's the case, please come up, sir. As the silver-haired young man came up, Zen suddenly rose to fight. This time, Zen lit up more than 50 dragon scales in his body and started the energy of the phoenix crystal on his right arm. After raising his speed, Zen was like a nimble and rapid leopard cat. The young man thought Zen would stand and resist the attack passively as he did in the last 2 rounds. But just as the young man prepared to make his move, Zen was already close at hand. He was ready to resist Zen's attack unwillingly. But as soon as Zen's punch hit him, he changed his expression. The strength was as powerful as the tide in the sea, and he couldn't cope with it. Bang! Only with one move, Zen smashed the young man and he flew out. He crashed many pieces of furniture in the feathery star hall where he landed. How dare you! Seeing what happened, someone shouted at Zen angrily. This was not a formal combat. But Zen didn't want to show mercy or respect. What's the fuzz? You must prepare to be beaten before fighting with me. If you can't keep up with me, better not challenge me. Zen spoke coldly. If he kept saving his strength, the fight today probably wouldn't end. Ray still smiled. Never mind. All of you just have fun today. Collateral damages can't be avoided when practicing. In Ray's opinion, it was better if they fought more intensely. Only in this way could they force Zen to show his real strength. Since Ray said that, more people volunteered to fight Zen. I want to have a fight. Bang! Another one was punched away by Zen. Please allow me to fight. Bang! One more was smashed away by Zen's fist. Can I have a fight? Bang! ... In just an hour, 8 people were punched away by Zen. He kept throwing punches ruthlessly. The first young man punched away by Zen had no injuries. But the succeeding opponents were beaten up so bad that they spit blood or had broken bones. Prince Ray gave them expensive pills for recovery, but they needed to rest for 10 to 15 days to fully recover. In the end, nobody dared to challenge Zen, and none of Prince Ray's young subordinates could defeat Zen. The old guys at the top of the illuminating soul realm could defeat Zen, but they didn't want to lower themselves to learn from him. After frightening Prince Ray's guests with his own method, Zen saluted again and expressed in a cold voice, "Prince, if I can't see Sky Princess, I have to leave and look for her by myself." However, Ray was still unhurried and seemed to see through Zen. He nodded. "Zen, I have something to show you. And after that, you can see her." Afterward, Ray clapped his hands. In no time, a group of maids-in-waiting walked out from behind the palace with brocade boxes of different sizes in their hands. The group of maids-in-waiting was followed by 3 foreign almost nude ladies. The 3 ladies had nothing on except 2 bright silver pads to cover their boobs and lower parts. They looked different from the ladies in the eastern region with sunken eyes, white skin, slender legs, and special styles. And because they were almost naked and walked with fascinating and mincing steps, they released a deadly charm to the male audience. As they walked out, all the men focused their eyes on them. Some men could not resist the temptation as their eyes turned red and their mouths started to dry. "Your Highness, what's the meaning of this?" Zen frowned and questioned. Chapter 330, The Right Price for Loyalty. Pointing to the 3 enchanting exotic girls, Ray smiled and told Zen, "They are the Yen people from the western region. They are still virgins. And you must have known that the virginity of Yen woman contains vigorous blood energy. If you cultivate with them, you can take their virginity and gain their blood energy at the same time." The blood energy had great benefits to the cultivators. If a person was energetic and vigorous, he could quickly recover from any injuries. So, if a cultivator had vigorous blood energy, their wounds could heal at an incredible pace. But the common way to enhance one's blood energy was through endless exercises, and it would take some time. In fact, it was as challenging as exercising the strength of soul. The pills that could enhance the blood energy were sold at sky-high prices just like those that could strengthen the soul. And the 3 girls of Yen nationality in front had such precious blood energy. It was indeed a double benefit for a cultivator to enhance his blood energy by cultivating with enchanting beautiful women in bed. It was a temptation that almost no man could resist. The 3 Yen girls had the hottest bodies that all man would crave for. Zen looked away from the girls and was about to speak when Ray walked to a brocade box and opened carelessly. Inside that box, there were 3 light red crystals emitting thick life vitality. The life vitality of the crystals was unrefined and had to be absorbed into human bodies to replenish their life vitality. The supreme life vitality crystal is the currency of the central region. It can replenish a cultivator's life vitality in an instant. At the current exchange rate, the value of a supreme crystal is equivalent to 1 million cubic crystals of the eastern region, Ray stated. The expression on his face was as if saying that those 3 supreme crystals were not the best. He was trying to hype Zen with the next boxes as if there were more valuable things in them than the supreme life vitality crystals. The currency used in the eastern region was cubic crystal. The cubic crystals could buy fancy things like flying chariots and the picture slabs. But the energy in the cubic crystal could not be directly absorbed by the cultivators. The cultivators of the eastern region could only acquire life vitality from their cultivation activities, but it would take time. If at a critical moment there was a shortage of life vitality, it would be difficult to replenish it in a short time. But life vitality crystals such as the Supreme Crystal could solve this problem. It contained the purest and ownerless life vitality that required no refining and could be easily absorbed into the cultivator's body. As mentioned before, a cultivator's life vitality didn't come from his body. It was the energy of nature. The cultivator could only borrow this energy for his own use, and ultimately, had to give it back to nature. On the other hand, Zen's demonic phantom had achieved that state where he could borrow the energy from nature without the need to return it. Even so, the Supreme Life Vitality Crystal was more powerful that it could replenish the life vitality by itself like a battery, and it instantly became the currency in the central region. But this kind of thing was just unimaginable in the eastern region. When faced with danger, a cultivator would be able to replenish his life vitality and improve his strength and skills by using the Supreme Life Vitality Crystal. Thus, it was said that the Supreme Crystal was a life extension for a cultivator. At the sight of the 3 high-priced Supreme Crystals, the guests at the Third Prince's banquet were astonished. "Your Highness, Zen wanted to say something, but Ray wasn't listening to him because he knew he was about to be rejected by Zen. He went to the next brocade box and opened it. Inside was a soft hedgehog armor with a bronze glow glittering on its surface. At first glance, everyone noticed that it wasn't an ordinary armor. The soft hedgehog armor is a low-grade fairy weapon. It has super defensive characteristics. It is made of golden silk which can isolate your body from all the forces of life vitality." Holding the armor in both hands, Ray described the armor and showed it to the audience. The armor was a low-grade fairy weapon used for defense. In addition to its defense feature for sharp weapons, it could also isolate the attack of life vitality. Because defensive weapons were extremely rare, the low-grade defensive weapons were almost as valuable as the top-grade offensive weapons. Hence, the value of this soft hedgehog armor was equal to a top-grade offensive fairy weapon. However, in the eastern region, it was a priceless treasure because no top-grade fairy weapons ever existed here. The guests looked at Zen with deep jealousy as he was being offered a priceless treasure in a golden platter. However, there was nothing they could do but to conceal their jealousy. They were inferior to Zen in terms of strength, so they could only just sit there and rot away in jealousy. In the previous battles, they took turns to fight Zen but were defeated easily. Moreover, Zen was only at 3rd grade of the nature level, so he had limitless future potential. He was worthy of the Third Prince's money and attention. To the other guests' dissatisfaction, the prizes presented to Zen were already too valuable, but the Third Prince was not yet done. He went on to open the next brocade box. "Your Highness, please stop. Why are you showing me all these stuff?" Zen cut in. "Don't open the rest of the boxes. I don't want to know what's inside." Zen made a cold remark trying to dissuade Ray from opening the rest of the boxes. Hearing this, Ray instantly stopped reaching for the next brocade box. With a faint smile on his face, he said, "Zen, you are a smart man. I believe you know what this means. I know you're trying to get me to join your camp. Am I right, Your Highness?" Zen asked calmly. His straightforwardness shocked all the guests at the banquet. Still, with a smile on his face, Ray replied, "It isn't just to simply join my camp. I want you to help me build an empire." With his eyes shining with hope, he continued, "If I ascend to the throne, I will unify the far south and the northwest, which will expand the territory of the Burning Sky Empire by 10 times. Above all, I will dominate the whole eastern region and make it a vast empire that can compete with the central region. Zen, your future development is unpredictable. You will certainly become a great help to me in the future. Let's work together to bring the eastern region into a new glory." Ray was a very ambitious and clever man. So, as soon as he knew that Zen wasn't interested in his treasures, he made him picture a vision to persuade the young disciple to join him. The cultivators were just humans that hoped to mark a spot in history. And by giving them a vision, it would eventually attract them to join the cause. It was an ultimate glorious thing to help the emperor in expanding his territory. They would go down in history with tremendous contributions that would be admired by future generations. "I am sorry, Your Highness. I have no intention in joining any group or factions," refused Zen. Whatever the Third Prince was offering would not attract Zen into his side. Much to the prince's dismay, his plan didn't work as he wanted. One of Zen's life goals was to pursue the ultimate of martial arts. He was determined to look down at the world from the summit of martial arts. His other goal was to protect her sister, Yan. According to Kenneth, Yan was staying in Cloud Sect safely. But she would eventually be taken away by the man in the central region one day. There was not much time left for Zen. He still needed to progress rapidly until he would be able to compete with that man. Only in this way could he change his sister's fate. Perhaps he had one more goal at present, that was to protect Aura, Master Su of Drizzle Peak. As to the future emperor of the Burning Sky Empire, whether it was Crown Prince, Third Prince, or Seventh Prince, Zen didn't care at all. After being rejected mercilessly by Zen, Rei's smiling face stiffened. He didn't say a word for a while. Seeing the dismay in the prince's face, some of the guests couldn't control themselves and shouted abuse at Zen. In their opinion, Rei favored him so much, but Zen was being too arrogant. Each of the boxes contained a precious gift and there could be more in the other boxes. Even the top 7 noble clans could hardly receive such high rewards from the royal family. Zen, are you really this stubborn? Can't you be just grateful at the Highness' kindness? His Highness appreciates you so much, but you keep on refusing him. Who do you think you are? Even if you are talented, you can only compete with a cultivator at the beginning of the Illuminating Soul Realm. Any master at the high grade of Illuminating Soul Realm can easily defeat you. There are many masters working for His Highness. In comparison, you're nothing but a bum. Are you challenging His Highness, lad? Or you're just playing hard to get? But let me tell you, don't be too greedy. Greed often ends badly. The guests scolded Zen one after another. Rei waved his hands to hush them. His face looked quite complicated. He realized that Zen's attitude was resolute and he had misjudged Zen's character. He thought that there was no deal in the world that could not be done with some high-priced gifts. He felt that he was inexperienced in reading people's mind. Despite being rejected, Rei admired Zen's talent and didn't want to give up. He puzzled himself over the matter of what Zen really cared about. Soon, his eyes brightened with joy and his face lit up into a smile again. He had tried to attract Zen with wealth and status that he completely forgot what Zen really wanted, his half-sister, Aura. He thought that he finally found the right price for Zen's loyalty. Chapter 331, Misunderstanding. Ever since Zen Luo had entered the Feathery Star Hall, his focus hadn't been on himself or on anyone or anything in the Great Hall itself. His only reason for staying and waiting was to wait for Aura Su. Rei already knew about the relationship between Zen and Aura. He had a vast network of informants at his command. Aura had been Zen's master when she was at the Drizzle Peak. However, there was something Rei didn't understand. If they only called each other master and disciple, why did Zen care about Aura so much? In any case, it wasn't important for Rei to know why Zen cared about her. The fact that Zen cared about Aura a lot was enough for him. Zen turned a deaf ear to the conversations of everyone else inside the Feathery Star Hall. He seemed bored and after a while, he asked Rei directly, "Your Highness, it has been a long while. Why isn't the Sky Princess here yet? Have you been teasing me from the very beginning? Please relax. The Sky Princess will be here any time." A smile appeared on Rei's face again. He seemed to be in a mood to keep Zen there as long as possible. The ambience in the Shine Hall was soft and there was a slight radiance in it. It had been quite busy in the past, but right now, it was desolate and quiet. Only a very few necessary servants still stayed in the hall. Others were not even allowed to get close to it. Being under house arrest was not a very pleasant thing. Aura was bored and had started to learn embroidery skills from an aged servant. Right now also, to while away the time, her deft fingers were holding a silver needle and guiding a colorful string through a piece of white satin. Being pretty smart, Aura had found it easy to learn. Delicate patterns were appearing on the satin gradually. They were neat, flexible and well-colored. Her skills had become much better than the aged servant herself now. But right now she was merely staring at the pattern and keeping still. She felt depressed that she could do nothing under this house arrest. Did the all-peak competition end? What performance could Zen Luo achieve? Among the top 100? Aura talked to herself inwardly. To be honest, in Aura's eyes, if Zen was able to be among the top 100, she would have felt greatly satisfied. Thinking about this, Aura's smart eyes turned crescent. If Zen really managed to succeed in this endeavor, the Drizzle Peak's rank would go much higher this time. She chose Zen from thousands of disciples. Aura really did seem to have a talent of spotting the occasional grain of wheat among large piles of chaff. And her loyalty lay to the Drizzle Peak, So much so that being a master there was better than staying here. If she had not left the Drizzle Peak, she would not have been involved in the political struggles of the imperial capital. But somehow, she could not remain unaffected due to her brother. The crown prince was her brother. It was a pity that she could not change the overall situation even though she had returned to the Burning Sky Palace. The palace where the crown prince stayed had been sealed off and no one was allowed to go in or out. Ray claimed that he had done it in order to protect the crown prince, but in reality, both her and the crown prince were under house arrest. As the sister of the crown prince, and the most favorite daughter of the old emperor, she was under the same situation as him. It was so boring here. How great would it be if she could go to the Cloud sect? She threw her hand in the air and the satin she was working on flew out and landed on the clothing shelf nearby. It had become a nearly finished job but she had no idea who she made it for. Walking on the smooth ground with her bare feet, Aura felt angry. But there was no one in here on whom she could vent her anger. It was becoming too much to stand now and she felt like her resolve would break. There was even a possibility that after a short while, she would take her sword and fight against the aged eunuchs in the palace. At this moment, a voice came from outside the hall. "Your Highness, Prince Ray asks you to go to the Feathery Star Hall." Hearing that, Aura blinked in curiosity. Who is going to meet me in there? What is going on? Does Ray want to kill me now? She thought. There was a cold smile appearing on her face. Theoretically, Ray would not kill her before the result of the competition between Ray and Khan came out. Ray had lots of resources and supporters while Khan was backed by the group of the old eunuchs. These eunuchs didn't show up in normal time, but they were a group of great power that could not be neglected. Before the results of the fight between the two princes come out, my brother and I should theoretically be safe. But what does Ray want to do right now? Why has he asked me to go to the Feathery Star Hall? I hope he isn't going to recall the happy time of growing up with me, his half-sister. These thoughts kept going on in her mind as she walked towards the hall. Familial obligations existed only as a formality among the royal people. Once there was a conflict of interest, the result would always be decided through fights. Being blood-related would change nothing. Aura walked out of the Shine Hall in a green groan. Coming to think of it, she had not come out of her hall for a long time up till now. It was almost as if she was a prisoner being released from her cell. She could not help shaking her head. It was a pitiable state that the Sky Princess had been put in and quite embarrassing too. On her way to the Feathery Star Hall, Aura breathed the fresh air freely. She forgot the situation of being imprisoned for the time being and enjoyed her temporary freedom. It had really tortured her to be under house arrest. Soon Aura came to the Feathery Star Hall. It wasn't unexpected that there were several lamps burning inside. Ray had a party going on with people every night. He did this to try and pull them towards his side. This would allow him to gain more support. Khan, who was the seventh prince and her half-brother, seemed to be a lot calmer and more composed than Ray. Except the masters of some top noble clans, Khan barely had connections with any warriors at all. Ray and Khan had different plans. No one could tell whose idea was better and it would only come to light once things had settled in the future. Entering the Feathery Star Hall, Aura started looking for Ray. Having been under house arrest for such a long time, she wanted to speak sarcastically to Ray. She felt that even though Ray was stronger than her, she could still vent some of her anger out using her words. All of a sudden when she was looking for Ray in the crowds, she found a familiar figure pacing about. He looked hauntingly familiar to her. When she saw his face, her eyes opened wide in shock. Zhen Luo, how did he get here? Is he taking Ray's side? Is he here to swear loyalty? A bad idea appeared in Aura's mind. In Aura's eyes, Zhen deciding to take Ray's side did not change the overall situation at all. There were already too many powerful people on Ray's side. Some people, who looked like ordinary guests, were actually at the illuminating soul realm. Zhen, a nature creature, could not be thought much of. Aura just felt terrible about it since Zhen joining him was akin to her being betrayed. Aura thought about the conversation she had had with Zhen. She had believed in him so much and had even expected that Zhen could create a miracle. She had hoped to see Zhen grow strong in the future and help her to change the overall situations. Now thinking about it, she felt that she had been too naive all that time. At about 20 years old, she was not a little girl anymore. How could she believe in a young man so easily? Maybe Aura had been under house arrest for such a long time that she had become oversensitive now. She felt that she had been betrayed and wanted to cry when she saw Zhen standing beside Ray. It seemed that she had found out an elite and cultivated him with great efforts, but the elite was now standing on the other side of the game. She felt bad even though it had not been wise of her to have put so much hope on this young man. Zen could not have changed the overall situation by himself at all. Master Su. Zen caught her in his glance and became excited. Of course Zen didn't know Aura had several negative thoughts going on in her mind right now. Zen was simply happy to see her safe. To him, Aura was not his master, but an elder sister. She had helped him a lot every time he had faced difficult situations. He had survived them with her help and belief. That was one of the important reasons why Zen had come to the Burning Sky Palace as soon as he had come back to the imperial capital. He must pay back the kindness of Aura. However, there seemed to be a cold frost in Aura's eyes. She replied coldly to Zen, "Yes. Do you have anything to talk to me? Since you have chosen to be on Rei's side, I don't suppose I am as important as I was before. So why did you want to see me? Do you want to show off the relationship between you and Rei?" Aura thought angrily. Are you all right? Seeing Aura's cold reaction, Zen was stunned and didn't know what to say. Aura smiled coldly and replied in a chilly tone, "Fine, I am always fine. I grew up in the Burning Sky Palace and this is my home. Why wouldn't I be fine?" Zen was puzzled. Looking at the cold expression Aura was touting, he tried to find out the reason why she was acting that way. But no matter how hard he looked, he could not know what was wrong with Aura. Why did she have such a cold attitude? Was she really fine under house arrest? But Zen was totally lost and did not know what to say. Chapter 332, The First Place. Aura found Zen's response strange and wondered why Zen looked a little uneasy. She had misunderstood Zen. It was a mistake on her part to take it for granted that Zen had thrown himself into Rei's lap. "But I heard that you had been placed under house arrest. I came here to free you today." Zen finally recovered and declared in a firm tone, with his gaze fixated on Aura. He was confused as to why Aura was so cold and unkind to him. But right now, thinking of his purpose for coming here, he decided that he had to make every possible effort to achieve his end. Even though Aura was reluctant, Zen wasn't going to rashly change his mind. This was just who Zen was. "Free me from house arrest?" Aura questioned back in a daze. Very soon, she added, "Will you be able to do so?" In Aura's opinion, it was improbable that Rei was going to put Zen in an important position even if Zen had decided to stand by Rei's side and become his subordinate. After all, too many talented and capable people served Rei, so Zen was not indispensable for the prince, especially since he was only a nature creature. "How would I know if I don't try?" Zen smiled. Upon hearing Zen's calm and sure reply, Rei chuckled all of a sudden, strolling over to him. He told him, "Zen, it is not impossible for you to take Aura away." "It is not impossible," mumbled Aura. She was shocked by the prince's words. She was even doubting her ears right now. In political conflicts of a royal family, attention was particularly paid to ruthless attack against opponents. Aura couldn't believe it at all that Rei was going to let go of her so easily. So why had he said something like that? How could it have been possible for Zen to make Rei concede? Rei nodded and continued with his gaze fixated on Aura, but with one condition. Zen's face turned gloomy when he heard the words coming out of Rei's mouth. Without any thought at all, he could easily guess what condition this guy was going to propose. Zen was able to figure out the condition, but Aura couldn't, and thus, she asked, "What condition?" "My sister, I will allow you to leave the Shine Hall and be free if Zen agrees to join me," Rei stated in a simple tone. "What?" Aura grumbled. Rei's condition astounded Aura, who mumbled deep in her mind, "Hasn't Zen thrown himself into Rei's lap already? Are they play acting? Why is he saying that he will free me if Zen joins him? What on earth is going on?" Aura was totally confused. She was lost in her complex thoughts and couldn't clear up her mind. Of course, Rei turned a blind eye to the fact that Aura was deeply indulging in her own wild thoughts. He had his own viewpoints. In fact, Rei believed that Aura was not critical for his cause. Perhaps she had developed some interpersonal relationships with the top 7 noble clans, which might be helpful for the crown prince. However, right now, the top 7 noble clans had already taken sides. The crown prince was just in name only and like a puppet. Thus, it was completely impossible to reverse the situation. Therefore, it wouldn't matter at all even if Rei let Aura out. No problems would be caused further as long as the crown prince was still under his control. However, it would be a great deal for Rei if Zen was willing to join him on the premise that he let go of Aura. Based on Zen's strengths, Ray would have a greater chance to gain support from Cloud Sect. If that really ended up happening as Ray had planned, it would be beyond doubt that he would win very soon. However, Aura was not satisfied by Ray's condition at all. She stood there in bafflement for quite a long while. As she snapped out of her daze, she suddenly switched her gaze towards Zen and asked, "Zen, I still don't know your ranking in this All Peaks competition. How did you score? How far did you go?" The only thing that made sense to Aura was that Ray's condition might be associated with the All Peaks competition, or else how could it be possible to exchange her freedom for Zen's loyalty? Unless Zen has made some amazing achievements in the All Peaks competition. His achievements were so amazing that Ray feels satisfied with his fighting tactics, Aura guessed. But it would mean nothing for Ray at all. Even Zen has been ranked among top 100. Did Zen manage to land in the top 50? No, wait, that was not enough for Ray to pay so much attention to Zen. If Zen had been put in the list of top 20, there was a small likelihood that Ray would speak highly of Zen's tactics, but it was still impossible for Ray to let Aura go just because of that rank. Did Zen win one of the top 10 places? Or top 5, or top 3? Aura's guesses kept on inching closer, even though she herself felt that her guesses were rather ridiculous. Since all her guesses were absurd, she had no choice but to ask Zen. However, contrary to all of her expectations, Zen touched his head and responded gently, "Master Su, I won the first place." The first place. Aura's voice faltered before she could finish her sentence. Perhaps she was the last one to have come to know about this and also the one that was the most shocked to hear the news. After all, she had always been the one to show the greatest concerns for Zen. In addition, she had been placing the greatest hope on Zen for getting good results. And even if she hadn't been, she was Zen's master. Regretfully, she had been put under house arrest inside the Shine Hall and couldn't receive any news of the outside world. As a result, she could only guess and infer in her mind whenever she thought about how well Zen would be able to perform in the All Peaks competition. But upon hearing her question, Zen had immediately replied to her that he had won the first place. Although he had responded in a low voice, Aura felt as if a streak of lightning had flashed across her brain and hit her. It was evident how sensational that piece of news was for her. Aura was sure that it was impossible for Zen to lie to her, but the news was really unbelievable, since she hadn't seen the announcement made by the Cloud Sect, and hadn't personally looked at the list of rankings released by the Cloud Sect or witnessed the fight. Zen's strength seemed to have been improved and reached the 3rd grade of nature level. Aura could easily detect all these improvements and changes in Zen. But what if Zen had reached the 3rd grade of nature level? How could he have battled with the top disciples of all 33 peaks? How could he have fought and won the disciples who had directly learned skills from elders and saints? In spite of her great doubt, Aura could do nothing but believe in the news. Only when she believed could she understand why Ray had put forward such a condition to set her free. Thinking from Ray's standpoint, Aura confirmed that she would surely make the same choice as Ray had if Zen had really won the first place among all disciples of Cloud Sect. In fact, Zen's words had been proven true by what Ray had stated. When she had been feeling rather bored in the Shine Hall, Aura had calculated that perhaps Zen would have been able to climb onto the list of top 100 contestants. But which place could he exactly win? Top 90? Or top 80? Aura was even not sure how many times she had made guesses about that. Now, she had realized that she had never guessed right. Is Zen's great achievement in the All Peaks competition enough for arousing great concerns of Kenneth Shi? Can Zen take me away from here since he has come to the Burning Sky Palace? As Aura was overawed by different questions, her heart was beating very fast. She could even hear her own heartbeat. On the other side, Zen turned around towards Ray and replied, "Your Highness, I have already told you very clearly that I will not take any sides in this battle." Ray seemed to have expected this answer from Zen's mouth and questioned calmly in response, "Then, Zen Luo, do you think that you can take the princess away without giving anything in return?" As if Zen had discerned the threats in Ray's words, he unsheathed his long streamer sword. Sheeing, the sound of Zen's sword being drawn from a sheath was heard clearly across the hall. Then, he declared sternly, "I never thought of taking Aura away without a fight. Since your highness seems to consider that I won't be able to make it, I would like to prove it." Hearing that Zen was calling her name so intimately, Aura throbbed a little and some unusual feelings crept into her mind. Didn't this guy always call me Master Su? Now, why is he calling me by my name directly? She thought to herself. Zen carried his sword in one hand, walked over towards Aura and took her by her hand. Then, he said, "Let's go." It would have been rather offensive to directly hold the princess's hand, but for some reason, Aura didn't seem to have any aversion towards it. Instead, she followed closely behind Zen. But when they had just taken 2 steps, an old man stopped them near the entrance of the Feathery Star Hall. This old man was not tall, but his nose was sharp and aquiline. He looked deadly ferocious, and some domineering pressure could be felt from his very posture. Zen, I really admire you. But my admiration can't be the excuse for you to look down upon me. You were able to challenge masters of the illuminating soul realm dependent upon your strengths as a nature creature. And today, all those guests present in this banquet are no match for you. In spite of this, do you think that you can take her away safely? Ray said, spreading out his hands. Ultimate level of the illuminating soul realm? Zen asked, his eyebrows knitting as he stared at the old man. Standing at the entrance emotionless like a robot, the old man was still blocking their way. He was a master at the ultimate level of the illuminating soul realm, so even other masters present in the Great Hall had a strong sense of oppression from him even though he was just standing there. It was almost as if he could kill them just by his looks. As this old man firmly gazed at him, Zen felt beads of sweat transpiring on his back. It had been a long period of time since he felt such a strong sense of oppression last time. Ray, do you dare to try and kill me? Zen asked coldly. Ray shook his head very calmly and responded, to be honest, I do not. Now, you are ranked number 1 in Cloud Sect. How would I be able to explain it to Kenneth if I kill you? Since you dare not, then why do you try to stop me today? As Zen was saying that, he turned back and moved forward with a flick of his sword. Immediately, the energy of the phoenix crystal on his right arm fully emancipated by itself. In the meantime, all dragon scales inside his body lit up, as he had almost exerted all his strengths. Evan hadn't stepped into the ultimate level of the illuminating soul realm yet, but Zen had been only capable of battling him in terms of sword play. Although this old man's gift and even his foundation were not as awesome as Evan's, he was not weak. Zen significantly lagged behind this old man in terms of cultivation levels. To confront with such a strong master, Zen had no choice but to adopt his mightiest tactic. Chapter 333, Smashing Through the Walls. Seeing that Zen's sword was coming at him with such mighty force, the old man felt a tinge of surprise. In fact, even if it had been some other master in his place, with greater powers at his disposal, he would also find Zen's unfathomable, ingenious and seemingly basic movements of swordsmanship strange. This wasn't so because Zen's abilities and moves were unbreakable. Even tactically the most sound of his moves would fail to make up for the enormous and undeniable strength gap that lay between the two. As Zen flicked the sword at him, the old man turned around with his short yet powerful stature to dodge the incoming attack. At the same time, he did something mentally and a short spear popped out of nowhere, lunging straight at Zen's streamer sword. Clink! The pointed head of the spear collided with Zen's streamer sword and let out a crisp tinkling sound. Though neither of the two weapons stopped in their paths, the spear slightly sank down. The old man seemed surprised. Obviously, he hadn't expected that Zen's long sword could contain such mighty force. His face darkened a little and he sneered as he injected a bit of gray-colored life vitality into his short spear. Now, he decided to beat back Zen's sword by relying on his life vitality. Zen backed a few steps when faced with that force. Then, without taking a breath, he lunged at the old man with his sword once more. 1 strike, 2 strikes, 3 strikes, 4 strikes. Every move that Zen made was impeccable and his performance of basic swordsmanship was, perhaps, second to none. Unfortunately, such basic moves were of no use and his attacks were constantly deflected by the old man's life vitality. Zen's face was clouded. His level in the martial arts really was very low. Even though he excelled at swordsmanship, which had given him the confidence and the ability to win over the aged man's short spear, in this fight, his opponent didn't seem fazed about his talent in this area at all. What they were doing was equivalent to a skilled boxer fighting with a 2-meter-high giant of a man. In such a case, techniques failed to come into play. Zen didn't give up though. With each passing deflection, his strikes came fiercer than ever, exerting all his efforts. Beads of sweat began to form on his forehead. Women all tended to fantasize, and Aura was no exception. She had fantasized about numerous scenes in which Zen was fighting, but never had she ever dreamed of the things she was witnessing in those moments. Her hand was firmly in Zen's grasp, his grip unyielding. Her palm was wet with Zen's sweat and with her own. Seeing that Zen's sword was fiercely whooshing forward and flashing brilliant silver streaks in the air, Aura felt greatly delighted. Although she knew that Zen was not a match for the old man, she still felt surprised that Zen had grown and cultivated so fast. Today, he was developed enough to possess the strength to confront the old man. Half a year ago, Veil had suppressed him easily, and he was at the initial level of the illuminating soul realm then. But today, Zen had the courage to battle against a master at the ultimate level of the illuminating soul realm. At that moment, Aura didn't mind the fact that she had been under house arrest at the Burning Sky Palace the last several weeks. She was happy to see Zen's growth and it had taken all the sadness and boredom off her mind. However, no breakthrough occurred in the fight even though a long time elapsed. Zen grew anxious, while the old man looked more at ease than ever before. The short spear had blocked all of Zen's strikes. It was like a cage that firmly locked Zen within its control. The old man smiled with derision. He now had the situation under his control. Zen was still so young and he believed that he wouldn't be able to break the lock formed by his short spear. While the old man showed his smug face, Zen's eyes flashed a hauntingly beautiful white light. A shadow of a figure rushed out from his body. At the same time, the blood-drinking sword sprang out from his space ring. Lily, freshly unleashed from inside him, grabbed the blood-drinking sword before she reached her highest point and stabbed at the old man. All this happened so sudden and so fast that from the moment Lily took the sword to the time she directed the sword towards the old man, it seemed that time had not passed. As a master at the peak of illuminating soul realm, the old man had a sharp sense. Even though he had used his short spear to lock Zen's sword, he still had enough extra energy to mobilize his senses. He could handle anything at ease even at the mere rustle of a few leaves caused by someone stealthily approaching him. But it never occurred to him that a person would rush out from Zen's body. This was incredible. More unsettling was the strong malicious aura that person was emitting. So the first reaction the old man had was not to attack, but to hold his short spear horizontally, trying to deflect Lily's stab. The problem was that his short spear was only a low-level fairy weapon. Even though he was at the peak of illuminating soul realm, he had very few spears at his disposal, let alone a short spear equivalent to a middle-grade fairy weapon. It was considered highly difficult to obtain such weapons. However, Lily was no ordinary person. And what she held in her hands was a middle-level fairy weapon. Moreover, the cultivation technique Lily was utilizing in her attacks was a kind of malicious aura. It was, to use the common phrase, super powerful. As soon as the sharp blade of the blood-drinking sword touched the wooden hilt of the short spear, there was a flash of red light and the low-level fairy weapon directly broke into two parts. The old man reacted quickly. At the very moment his short spear was broken, he immediately retreated a few steps back. But he was too slow compared to Lily, and the blood-drinking sword still stabbed into his chest and drops of blood came out from the wound. The old man crazily fled backward, and Lily ran behind him in hot pursuit. She followed closely behind at a brisk, powerful pace, her pretty figure dancing every step of the way. She was determined to catch him and kill him. Let's go. Lily's dancing steps and movements seemed delicate but her swordsmanship was very powerful. However, even she was not a match for the old man. She had just happened to pop out and catch him off guard. After the latter had come back to his senses, Lily might not be able to withstand his attacks. Holding Aura's hand, Zen raced away rapidly. Aura could feel a mighty force drag her forward. She didn't need to take any steps to follow him, since that mighty, invisible force was pushing her and she felt like she was riding on a cloud. After running for a while, a vermilion wall appeared in their path and blocked the way. All the walls in the palace were painted in vermilion and were 1 meter thick. However, Zen didn't stop. When he finally approached the wall and got close enough to it, he simply bumped into it without any hesitation at all. As a result, the wall cracked open and a big hole appeared in it. Zen grew more and more uneasy, looking like a caged beast. He had brought his strength and speed into full play. While Aura, who was standing behind him, cracked into a smile. She had been caught in the Shine Palace for quite a period of time and today, she felt very pleased to see that Zen had grown so strong. She was blissfully happy, she looked as if she was intoxicated. She followed Zen silently as she watched his broad back. It almost seemed to her that she really didn't care whether they could get out of the Burning Sky Palace or not. More importantly, Aura was clear that it was impossible for Zen to get out with her. "Your Highness, let us go and stop this man." The guests of the Feathery Star Hall volunteered to accompany the old man behind Zen. Ray turned a deaf ear towards them. He was busy gazing firmly at Lily, who was now fighting with Uncle Kyle. Kyle was the old man Zen had been fighting. He was a trusted follower of Ray, and also an elder of the family. As Lily initiated her sword dance, Kyle panicked. Now, with his spear broken into two by her sword, it was very difficult for him to deflect Lily's sword dance. But after several rounds, Kyle finally took control with his life vitality. He became more valiant in the fight. Gusts of winds came from his palms and streams of life vitality escaped from his body, which helped him withstand the attacks of Lily's sword dance. He was finally successful in forcing Lily to retreat. At this moment, Lily's eyes, which were originally full of malicious aura, suddenly flashed a dark shade of red. She turned into a dot of red light and whirled around the drinking blood sword, rushing out of the feathery star hall. As Lily was Zen's sword spirit, their hearts were connected. Zen clearly knew that Lily would not be able to hold on for too long, so he immediately summoned her back. Kyle cupped his hands and bowed to Ray. "Your Highness, please let me go and catch Zen." Ray shook his head and refused. "No. We have already created quite a stir with the loud noise your fighting made. I have sent a message to Hendy." "Hendy, Your Highness, do we really have to bother Hendy for this matter?" Kyle was slightly surprised. "Yes, we didn't have to do that earlier on. But now, a group of hateful eunuchs have come in the middle. What else can I do?" Ray sneered. Kyle frowned as Ray's words sank into his mind. If the eunuchs got a hand in this matter, there was going to be great trouble. "Come with me tonight. Things are getting a little tricky now." Ray floated up in the air and flew out of the feathery star hall. Although he had never taken admission into the Cloud sect, as the most competitive prince of his generation, he still was pretty talented. And the resources that came into his hands were no less than the resources that any elite disciple of the Cloud sect could enjoy. He had reached the illuminating soul realm long ago. Bang, 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 several walls were smashed into pieces with loud crashes accompanying each hit. Seeing them whirling through the palace, many maids and eunuchs shrieked in horror. When he was hitting the walls, Zen was also applying a slight vibration with his hands. At the moment he touched the wall, his body vibrated intensively with a low amplitude. Therefore, the impact on the wall was destructible. And every time Zen casually smashed into the wall with his body, the wall cracked into a hole as big as 2 meters high. Zen's face and head were covered with ash and mud, and he looked like something the cat had dragged in. Aura was in stark contrast to him though. She was following closely behind him, looking immaculate, with no signs of dirt or ash on her at all. Why is this accursed burning sky palace so big? Zen got frustrated now. He had gone in a straight line the moment he had gotten out of the feathery star hall, and he had broken dozens of walls along the way. It was beyond him why he hadn't walked out of the burning sky palace yet. The feathery star hall is situated at the left front of the burning sky palace. You're heading into the very depths of the palace since you took a right. If you continue on this route, I'm afraid you will have to walk through the whole palace before we see the light of day. No wonder you feel that the palace is so big, Aura replied slowly with a graceful smile. Zen lost his head upon hearing her. Oh my goodness, why didn't you tell me that earlier? He was depressed. It turned out that he had been headed the wrong way all the time. He was going into the depths of the burning sky palace instead of getting out. What a disappointment. It's okay, Aura replied in a low voice. Okay, why? If we had taken the right turn earlier on, we might have already gotten out of the burning sky palace. While talking, Zen smashed against another wall and they entered into a beautiful and delicate garden. The idyllic scene in the garden was quite a feast to the eyes, with several birds singing in the air, flowers casting forth their fragrance, and trees throwing a pleasant shade on the ground. They felt as though they had entered a fairyland. Under a willow tree sat a young man wearing a purple hat. In front of him was a string-plucked instrument. He was plucking those strings gently with his slender fingers, and a sad melody engulfed the air. Looking at the young man, Zen suddenly stopped. It was not that he was afraid of the young man. He could sense that the young man's strength was at the initial level of illuminating soul realm at best. And Zen would certainly not take him seriously. It was the 3 people who were standing beside the young man that made Zen hesitate. Those men were clad with KO hemp cloth archer uniform. And they were wearing a black belt connected by white jade on their waists. Zen could not figure out the real strength of these 3 men. He could only sense from the aura they were emitting that the strength of the 2 men standing on the side were relatively weaker. And the man who was standing in the middle was even stronger than Elder Shu, and among the masters Zen had seen, he might be only lesser to Kenneth. I said it was okay, because I knew you would not be able to get me out of the burning sky palace. Aura replied sweetly with a gentle smile. Chapter 334, pointing out the problem. Putting the Crown Prince and the Sky Princess under house arrest was not the sole decision of the third prince. In truth, the seventh prince had been in on the plot, too. The Crown Prince was more like a pawn, but he could not be discarded at random, though he was quite useless. After all, with the outcome of the throne battle still in suspense, neither the third prince, Ray, nor the seventh prince, Khan, was willing to tackle the Crown Prince. If either of them made a move against the Crown Prince now, the other would accuse him of usurping the throne. Both of them knew they could not carry such blame on their backs. But if one of them deposed the Crown Prince after he gained an absolute advantage, nobody would dare step forward to speak for the Crown Prince. The young man with the purple hat swept his fingers along the zither calmly. The music was at times loud and sonorous, at other moments more sorrowful and euphemistic. It was quite an exquisite play. "Who is he?" asked Zen. "He's Khan, the seventh prince," Aura answered him. Hearing Aura's voice, Khan stopped playing at once. He smiled, calling out in a bright and clear voice, "Sister Aura, good evening to you." Aura bit her lips, saying, "Well, good to see you too, brother." Tonight, the burning sky palace was so clamorous that I couldn't fall asleep. So, I came out to play a piece. I wonder if Sister Aura and the friend beside you are interested in hearing my piece?" inquired Khan with a smile. "No, not at all," Zen replied flatly. He had no patience in dawdling over social etiquette with this young man. At first glance itself, Khan's uncanny appearance revealed him not to be a too decent guy. Zen just tugged Aura forward, attempting to walk through the hole in the wall and find a way outside. However, the moment he moved, a waft of wind whirled in. Two men stood at the hole that Zen had created in the clash. The two of them moved in such an eerie fashion that Zen failed to see how they came to be there. It looked like they had been stationed in that hole all along, when just a second ago, they had been beside Khan. "Our seventh prince is seldom in such a good mood to play. Please hang around and listen, won't you?" one of the two said, his words more of a demand than a request. To Zen's surprise, his voice sounded as high-pitched as a woman's. With the two men in the way, Zen tilted his head dangerously, snarling, "You two darn eunuchs." Calling someone a eunuch at the Burning Sky Palace was not an act of insult. In fact, a eunuch occupied an official position in the palace, and not everyone was qualified for it. Almost anyone who could be classified as a eunuch was powerful. If Zen had simply called them two eunuchs, the two would have probably not minded it. However, Zen referred to them with an insult. The expression on their faces turned unpleasant. After all, their martial arts skills were quite extraordinary. They might not be a match to Elder Shu, but they could surely take out other elders of Cloud Sect. The two of them were certainly top of the range practitioners in the eastern region. "You rat, you're lucky our seventh prince is in a good mood today. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been standing there spewing insults right now. You're merely at the third grade of nature level. Who do you think you are to talk that way?" one of the eunuchs sneered. "Well, I might not be a big shot, but at least I can have kids and continue my legacy," Zen said outrageously, giving them a slight smile. Aura could not help but let out a giggle, her face turning red at the words. Zen just poked fun at the physical defects of the two eunuchs. It was too audacious. To become a eunuch, one had to be castrated, that was to say, get his manly part removed. But it was not an entirely awful thing because without it, a man was able to maintain his male vitality inside of his body and practice some unique cultivation methods. Since eunuchs did not indulge in sex, besides taking on the responsibility of looking after their masters, they had enough time to concentrate on practicing the martial arts. That was the reason the eunuchs of the Burning Sky Palace were a group not to be neglected. Many of them were martial arts experts. Lacking the manly part was, nevertheless, not a thing one reveled in. It was a sore spot for nearly all eunuchs that they avoided addressing. Still, Zen pointed it out, so how could the two eunuchs not feel their blood boil? "You rot in hell." Sure enough, one of the eunuchs was incensed and not able to stifle his fury. He flicked his wrist and 3 9-inch long black needles darted at Zen. The black needles were not the usual ones. It seemed that they contained a certain peculiar form of life vitality that wrapped itself around the needles and protruded like a serpent sticking its tongue out. Zen, of course, sensed the power concealed in the weapons. It was just that the strength of the eunuch was too overwhelming for Zen to contend with. He made an attempt to dodge the 3 needles, but before he could duck them, they were in front of his eyes. Clank, clank, clank. Just as the 3 black needles were about to hit Zen's forehead, 3 sharp noises were heard. An invisible, enchanted barrier seemed to have swooped in before Zen and blocked the needles. The needles collided with the obstruction without sinking in even the fraction of an inch and then proceeded to drop to the ground. "Wasim, don't kill him," said the eunuch behind Khan in a cold voice, the one issuing the powerful energy of the barrier. Evidently, the enchantment was his work. A hint of a sardonic grin climbed onto Aura's face. Even if the 3 black needles that the eunuch cast were lethal, she was not much worried, for she knew that Khan would dare not do anything to Zen. Since Zen was the winner of the All Peaks competition, he was bound to join the test of the Cloud Road. If Zen, a man Kenneth had selected for the program, died at the Burning Sky Palace, Khan would land himself in big trouble, and so would Ray. The 2 princes were fighting for the throne, scheming openly as well as in secret. But if they riled Kenneth, there would be no way either of them could become an emperor. The strong always had the last word. Even the emperor had to bow before those stronger at the martial arts than him. It was how the world was running. Aura was wise enough to perceive this. She was positive that Zen would not encounter any real danger at the Burning Sky Palace. She also knew that she had no way of escaping this place. So why not go along with Zen's antics? It was shocking for him, but it was fun and made her feel lighthearted, if even for a few moments. "Mr. Luo, you are not powerful enough that we should allow you to misbehave at the Burning Sky Palace. I'm telling you, stop this now," Khan said in a bland but strong voice. "Stop it." Zen cast Aura a long look. He would never give up on what he was determined to do. "Your Highness, what must I do to make you release Aura and me?" "Release you too?" Khan shook his head indifferently, playing a few notes before continuing. "You can go, but Sister Aura cannot, unless..." Zen frowned, probing. "Unless what?" "Unless you take a side. You may side with Ray, or with me. Your choice," Khan announced, beaming up at him. Khan's requirements were different from Ray's. He already had the eunuchs backing him up. Now he only needed to rope in some of the patriarchs of the 7 noble clans, whereas Ray needed to recruit all kinds of capable men. A man like Zen, however, was a special talent, no matter where he went. Khan certainly would not mind securing the skills of such a genius. It would mean Khan had access to unlimited potential on his side. "What if I refuse to give up?" Zen asked him in a frosty tone. Khan Su smiled, replying, "I don't like making threats, especially when you have the Cloud sect backing you. I really don't want to make an enemy out of you, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't dare to. I advise you to conduct yourself well from now on." As he was speaking, the door to the yard swung open. The 3rd prince, Ray, entered the scene. Following Ray was a throng of guests who had come to attend that day's feast, including the old man who was at the final level of the illuminating soul realm. Among the people was a stout man who wore black robes. Catching sight of the fat man, the corners of Zen's eyes seemed to twitch. The royal palace was not short on impressive talent. The plump guy was certainly not inferior in strength to the eunuch standing behind Khan. Ray shot Khan a shrewd glance before speaking to him with a smile. "My favorite brother of all. How carefree you are, playing the zither on such a dark and windy night. I heard you say you'll hunt Zen down. Well, it's not what an honest man would do." These days, the 2 princes hardly got along. They were as incompatible as fire with water. Some said they would soon battle it out in a war of life and death. The expression on Khan's face turned ice cold when he caught sight of his brother. "What does that have to do with you?" he demanded viciously. "It sure does. Today, Zen finally consented to honor me with his company at my feathery star hall." Quote. As the 2 princes stared daggers at each other, the followers behind them stood still. This kind of confrontations had occurred numerous times already. But so far, the 2 had restrained the conflicts to verbal spats alone. If they got violent, the entirety of the Burning Sky Palace would soon be drenched in blood. As the 2 princes argued, Zen suddenly bellowed, "Enough!" Hearing Zen's shout, the 2 princes stood dazed. Soon, faint smiles curled their lips. They might fear each other, but neither of them took Zen very seriously, given that the latter was hardly at top levels of the nature level. His strength was praiseworthy, but not so impressive to them. If he joined any of their leagues, it would be great for them. But even he didn't, it was no big deal. Zen threw them a sullen look. "Your Highnesses, today I might lack sufficient strength to get Aura out of here. But could I point out a problem?" "What?" asked Ray. Khan rested his fingers on the strings of his instrument, his hard eyes fixed on Zen. "Right now you might overpower me with help from those willing to back you." But one day, when I return with my accomplishments at cultivation, would you wish to watch your empire get run down to the ground? Zen asked them in a quiet but awe-inspiring voice. Chapter 335. Powerful Internal Elixir Realm Warriors. Neither Ray nor Khan expected it, and they were astonished. Then the two of them laughed loudly as if they'd just heard a hilarious joke. Echoing their laughter, the entourage standing behind the princes laughed heartily as well. Behind Ray, the guests guffawed, laughing so hard that some were doubled over, clutching their bellies. Zen's threat was the funniest joke they'd ever heard. Did I hear him right? Did he say that he would destroy our country? My word, this boy isn't in his right mind. The empire has survived many threats, and is still standing. It's strong, and will stand forever. How dare he threaten us? Has he lost his mind completely? I thought I had confidence. This man takes the cake. Ha ha, he has so much bluster that his wind could cause a tornado. Even the usually serious, taciturn chief eunuch smiled, as did Hendy. Zen was indeed a genius from the Cloud sect, the type of genius that came once a millennium. But, as with any title, genius denoted potential, and not necessarily what he had already achieved. Many geniuses were born into the world every year, but few endured long enough to mature into seasoned warriors because it was the age of survival of the fittest. A few worked to make their way up towards the top, whereas the rest blended into the crowd, or worse yet, became nothing more than a heap of bones on the ground. The world might be full of opportunities, but it also demanded precise moves. One wrong step could mean doom, on any given day. A genius would be wise to maintain a low profile if he wanted to survive. As a fledgling, which Zen was, he'd made a grave mistake. Because the Burning Sky Empire was like a huge monster. It was the largest, and strongest empire in the eastern region, making this a superpower to be reckoned with. On the grander scale, there were more prominent countries than the Burning Sky, and no country could remain the most powerful in this big, evil world. And one day, doom was bound to befall the empire, but not at Zen's hands. In order to destroy the Burning Sky Empire, Zen would need to be as formidable, if not stronger, as Kenneth, and as far as Ray and Khan could see, that was a slim to none possibility. Zen had the same odds of being as powerful as Kenneth, as being struck by lightning walking down the street, on a bright, sunny day. Ray sighed loudly and said, Zen, I was about to draw you over to my side. But, I see now that you are brainless, so, I give up. Khan shook his head and echoing the sentiment, added, normally, anyone bold enough to offend either of us would be dead by now. You aren't like them though. Since you are about to submit yourself to the test of the Cloud Road, you won't be killed. However, you do need to be taught a lesson. At that, the chief eunuch stepped from behind Khan with an explosion of power bursting from within him, building around him, and billowing like endless sea waves. As the pressure continued to increase, it rose above the level an illuminating soul warrior possessed, and everyone there became overwhelmed with the crushing force, particularly Zen. Now Zen realized that the eunuch was stronger than he'd initially thought. Instead of being at the consummation stage of illuminating soul realm, this guy was an expert warrior at the internal elixir realm. The internal elixir realm was a level Zen hadn't learned much about, yet. And the only warrior Zen knew who was at the internal elixir realm was Kenneth. It had been just the other day that Zen had witnessed Kenneth's strength in battle. Kenneth's destructive power shocked the entire Cloud sect population when he threw a single strike, which eliminated Saint Vienna as he attempted to escape, and turned him into a pile of charred, bloody entrails and flesh. Although Zen presumed the eunuch's strength was the same as Kenneth's, the eunuch didn't strike at Zen. Alternatively, the eunuch used his energy, building it to crush Zen's soul. The intense pressure exerted weighted Zen down and it felt as though he was sinking in a large lake with thousands of pounds of cold water, where the force made it impossible for him to breathe. Concurrently, Hendy moved, releasing his hidden strengths, and forcing a tremendous amount of pressure onto Zen. As Zen felt the intensity, he determined Hendy was a warrior at the internal elixir realm too. Albeit, there were subtle differences in the strength wielded by each assailant. If the eunuch's force was like the rippling, icy cold lake, then, Hendy's was a high mountain, falling on Zen's soul with brutal intensity. Together, the two were a savage pair, and most opponents crumbled quickly. If Zen had been an ordinary warrior, he'd be dead by now. The impact of the pressure each attacker forced onto Zen challenged his soul, while it tortured his physical form. Having a body forged and enhanced like an indestructible fortress meant it was easier for Zen to deal with bodily harm. And while he could virtually ignore the corporeality pressure exerted on him, the real difficulty was the weight pushing against him mentally. Zen, Aura called out in an anxiety-ridden voice. Even if the two masters promised not to hurt Zen physically, they could decimate him mentally, which would cause more damage than any physical attack, and yet, wouldn't be violating the rules. She was worried, but, she couldn't do anything about it. What could she do though? When Zen was faced with Veil, she used her title as a deterrence. When Zen was attacked by the Saints, she helped him out again, by utilizing her position and power to resolve the dilemma. Now though, there wasn't any way for her to help him. Her current situation was complicated. She wasn't able to fend for herself because her brothers looked down on her while her title and position were nothing special to them. How could she deter her brothers and their escorts to help Zen? Her eyes grew large, brimming with anxiety, but she was helpless. Aura stamped her foot in nervous anger. Just when she would have acted rashly, she felt Zen's arm seize hers. She looked over and saw Zen shaking his head, before giving her a calming tranquil glance, even though the pressure pushing in on him was so intense that he couldn't make a sound. When Aura saw the look in his eyes, she was dumbfounded. She knew that he was silently telling her he would endure and not to worry. Zen's soul was firmer and stronger than most fighters. All this time, Zen had defeated many fighters, not only warriors that were the same rank as him, but the ones who were above him, at the preliminary stages of illuminating soul realm. But strong as his soul was, it wasn't stronger than that of an internal elixir realm warrior. When a fighter entered the internal elixir realm, he was addressed as an expert and treated respectfully throughout the eastern region. The internal elixir realm warriors were representative of the elite martial art warriors that the eastern region offered. And when they used their might against Zen, it was a stiff trial. Under the immense pressure, Zen's soul began to shudder. Subconsciously, his voice vibrated in his throat. Still, he gazed at Aura with comforting warmth. Aura could sense the agony he felt though, and looking in his eyes, she saw his pain deep in there. She knew Zen was close to the brink of destruction and failure. Zen was indeed the genius who took first place in the All Peaks competition, and he did it even though he was at the nature level. Still, there were warriors at the illuminating soul realm and also the internal elixir realm above the nature creatures. Next to them, Zen might as well have been an ant. He'd been proud of the intensity of his soul, but it was no longer an advantage. It was just a matter of time before he was beaten, and crushed until only ashes remained. Aura took Zen's hand in silence and squeezed it so tightly that her knuckles began to turn white from the force. She had the urge to kneel before her half-brothers and beg them to let Zen go. Experience had taught her that no amount of pleading with them would work though. There wasn't much family affection in the royal family, and they'd endangered themselves before struggling with each other. The only way that her brothers would listen was if Aura offered something that they were interested in having. What should she do though? How could she possibly help? Desperately racking her brain for an idea, Aura began to feel overwhelmed, and couldn't recall ever feeling so vulnerable and fragile. Her eyes welled up with tears. Alongside Aura, Zen's soul shook more violently and was on the verge of giving way. If his soul disintegrated, he would never recover his sanity, and he'd be an idiot forever. The chief eunuch and Hendy reined in their assault when they saw how close Zen was to the edge, allowing him a small respite. Since they were aware if Zen suffered irreversible damage, it would aggravate Kenneth and bring trouble to the two princes, they didn't want that to happen. Suddenly, a thunderous laugh was heard in the sky above them. Ha ha ha, bullying my disciple, what powerful internal elixir realm warriors you two must be. Shame on you. As soon as the newcomer finished speaking, an invisible force spread and enveloped Zen. The barrier of protection stopped the storm of pressure from falling on him, ricocheting it back at Hendy and the chief eunuch. Hurt by the injuries the two got from the rebounding, they groaned and turned pale. The eunuch suffering more retreated a few paces. The two of them stared at the newcomer with disbelief. Boom! As the colossal figure, he slammed into the ground from the air, and his feet crushed the stone tiling. Standing in front of them was an unshakable mountain of a man. Master Shi. Aura's eyes glistened as she shouted joyfully. Kenneth nodded in acknowledgement before he gave Zen a glance and asked, "You still alive over there?" Zen bobbed his head and took a deep breath. The color returned to his face quickly and he was able to think straight. Only moments ago, he'd been at a critical juncture and thought his soul would give out. In his mind, the cyan dragon gave his head a slight disapproving shake and said to himself, "His soul is always absolutely safe with me here." The dragon was still too weak to remain awake for long since the killing Sword Mountain, and had been sleeping soundly earlier. When Zen was attacked, and the pressure became unbearable, the cyan dragon woke up, and, even though he remained silent, he watched Zen and his two opponents. But, the cyan dragon was only there to observe and didn't intend to rush to his aid because Zen needed to overcome every obstacle on his own. Zen might be gifted, intelligent, and blessed, but for him to be truly strong, he needed to be able to manage alone. Outside forces, after all, would be another's power, and Zen couldn't rely on others all the time. Since there was a light ray within the furnace that was capable of repairing any soul damage, instantly, the cyan dragon planned on waiting until Zen's soul had been disintegrated. Unfortunately, Kenneth interrupted his plans when he suddenly appeared, saved Zen, and prevented Zen's soul from disintegrating. Actually, Kenneth had been there, watching for some time too. He hadn't showed himself until a critical point came and Zen was about to fail. Of course, Kenneth didn't know that the cyan dragon was in Zen and could have saved him at the last minute. So, to ensure that Zen didn't end up mindless, he needed to step in and help. After all, Zen was the most significant disciple participating in the Cloud Road test. Therefore, Kenneth needed to prevent any accidents from befalling him, especially any that would damage his soul and leave him an idiot forever. This was why he had shown up, and forced the two attackers to retreat. Chapter 336, A Huge Face. Once Kenneth descended from the sky, others who were floating in the air also slowly landed. All the elders from Cloud Sect were present, including Elder Shu, who rarely made a public appearance. Elder Shu was highly skilled at using cultivation methods related to life. When he landed, he walked up to Zen and advised him, "Stop resisting." Heeding the advice, Zen felt the slow infusion of green life vitality into his mind. What, ordinarily, being pressed down by two internal elixir realm warriors could cause severe damage to one's soul. So, it surprised Elder Shu to find out this was not the case with Zen. His soul sustained no serious injuries but was slightly weaker. And this would only take a day or two for the warrior to restore himself. Having witnessed Zen's performance, Elder Shu was aware that his soul was stronger than that of ordinary martial artists, yet he was still surprised. Those two are so strong that I dare not despise them. I didn't expect this boy to make it through. So, it is quite impressive. Master Shi. Recognition had him standing up quickly and Khan bowed to Kenneth. Meanwhile, Ray, who was on the other side, also carefully bowed to Kenneth. Even the Emperor had to bow when he saw the leader of Cloud Sect, not to mention the two princes. When others saw Kenneth, regarded as the strongest man in the eastern region, they were shocked. To everyone's surprise, Kenneth didn't even bother to look at Khan or Ray and ignored them completely. Instead, he walked over to Zen, patted him on the shoulder, and smiled. "How ambitious you are. That's my boy. You want to wipe out this country? That's great. I'm in." He laughed. When he heard Kenneth's words, Ray felt that his heart was in his throat, and became extremely nervous. Meanwhile, Khan forced a smile, which was worse than a cry. If Kenneth wanted to wipe out the Burning Sky Empire, he could. When Cain was still alive, the Emperor of the Burning Sky Empire was more powerful than Kenneth. Over the years, the empire grew in prosperity and strength because of him. But now, Cain was missing. Who could match and compete with Kenneth in the Burning Sky Empire? Eunuchs flanked Khan. One of them was a master at the primary level of Internal Elixir Realm and Khan's strongest supporter. Although powerful, he was still no match for Kenneth. There was Hendy, who assisted Ray, and had likewise reached the primary level of the Internal Elixir Realm. However, even if Hendy teamed up with the chief eunuch, they didn't stand a chance of conquering Kenneth. Other than Kenneth, there were vice leaders, elders, saints, and other excellent people in Cloud Sect. So, it was quite impossible for them to confront Cloud Sect. If Kenneth wanted to, he could kill them all, and recommend someone from other clans to be the emperor. He could even end up as Emperor of Burning Sky, and no one would have any objections. "Sir, wasn't that a little inappropriate?" Though frightened, Ray spoke politely. "Inappropriate?" Kenneth laughed arrogantly. "So what?" he said. "You think you can bully people? And why do you refuse to let anyone else fight back? You think you're the one. The Son of Heaven." The view that the Emperor was the Son of Heaven was nothing more than the opinion of ordinary people, or the words of the ruling class used to influence lesser people. Son of Heaven, that was the last thing martial artists would believe. They were trained to practice cultivation methods against the heaven. Tough-minded martial artists didn't care if their enemy was the heaven or the heaven's son. In a squeaky voice, one eunuch reminded, Master Shi, you made a deal with our emperor that you would stay out of Burning Sky Empire's affairs. Sneering, Kenneth said, I know you stupid eunuch would bring this up. Relax. I have no interest in your country's internal strife, much less in destroying it. I only want to tell Zen that he can return to you after he passes the test of Cloud Road and enters Cloud Hall. He added, I will never allow anyone outside the Cloud sect to bully my disciples. Even with Kenneth reprimanding them, the eunuchs showed no signs of displeasure but felt relieved. Their greatest fear was Kenneth interfered in their struggle. If they upset the man, he would probably support the Crown Prince. In that case, they would have to turn over the throne to the Crown Prince. After all, no one dared to confront the Cloud sect. Throwing them a cold look, Zen said coolly, I will live up to your expectations. Khan and Ray looked at Zen and felt slightly anxious. Although both men had gathered intelligence on Zen, they continued to underestimate him in view of the present situation. In particular, they misjudged Zen's talent and strength, as well as his status in Kenneth's heart. They had thought Kenneth would stay out of this business, as long as they didn't kill Zen, but only taught him a lesson. No one actually hurt Zen, but this already infuriated Kenneth. Why did Zen make the leader of Cloud Sect think so highly of him? What on earth was the man capable of doing? Perhaps in time, he would be as good as Kenneth. Let's go. Raring to get out of the place, Kenneth didn't want to speak to them anymore, so he started getting ready to leave. Briefly hesitating, Zen said, Sir, Master Su. But he was interrupted. Of course, Aura will leave with us. And no one will dare to stop us. As soon as he finished speaking, Kenneth flew away. His rising figure was like a soaring mountain. According to the rules, flying over Burning Sky Palace was strictly prohibited, but Kenneth didn't care about rules at all. In midair, something occurred to Kenneth, so he said, by the way, Cain once told me that if he died, you could fight each other. And the winner can sit as the emperor. But I warn you, if you kill the Crown Prince, I will not let you go. The man's words made Khan and Ray frown slightly. Kenneth's word was the law, and it was infallible. In the past, he had stayed out of the affairs of Burning Sky Empire. But now that he had said it, they must follow his orders. After all, he was the strongest man in the eastern region. He refused to let them hurt the Crown Prince. This order meant that Kenneth provided special protection for the prince. But for Ray and Khan, it was nearly impossible to seize the throne without hurting the Crown Prince. Yet, they were bound to obey Kenneth. Aura was clearly in an excellent mood. Then a green leaf suddenly appeared at Elder Shu's feet. Zen and Aura together stepped on the leaf. As Aura glanced at her two younger brothers, she broke into a smile. Looking at the guy next to her, Aura couldn't help thinking, I didn't think he could do it. Before the All Peaks competition, Aura did entertain such fantasies, but she thought her dream was unrealistic. However, in less than a month, Zen was able to make that dream come true, and this was quite surprising. The situation inside the palace had not changed, and Aura understood this. Her brother, the Crown Prince of Burning Sky Empire, was still unable to change his fate. However, with Kenneth's protection, there was a chance to change the situation. Since Kenneth valued Zen very much, the young disciple could have the power to destroy the country in the future. Talks about destroying the Burning Sky Empire was merely a threat. Even if Zen had the strength to wipe out the country, he would never do that. After all, martial artists at that level were not interested in being emperors at all. The highest goal ordinary people aspired for was to be an emperor. Martial artists, however, had even loftier goals. In the days when Cain held so much power, he barely cared about the state of affairs. It was the Crown Prince who handled everything in Burning Sky Empire. As emperor, Cain often accepted missions from Cloud Hall and ventured out to fulfill them. He was not so much an emperor as a martial artist. In their return to Drizzle Peak, Aura and Zen received a warm welcome from the Peak's disciples. Drizzle Peak was completely different at this point. Numerous practicing realms and magic arrays were built to provide disciples with a better environment for improving themselves. As the first among 33 peaks that was able to move from the last place to first, Drizzle Peak made history. And this remarkable change benefited all of Drizzle Peak's disciples. They thanked Zen for everything he had done, and Aura, for having brought Zen to Drizzle Peak. However, their joy was short-lived. Something bizarre caused it to disappear. One day, a huge face suddenly appeared in the sky of Cloud Sect. Chapter 337, Yan needed Zen's protection. After Zen returned to Cloud Sect, he continued cultivating without interruptions. There was only a half-month left before the start of Cloud Road. If Zen had not visited the Luo clan, he would have focused entirely on cultivation. Meanwhile, both Rocher-Hua and Patrick Pei had been absorbed in their cultivation. Rocher had stayed in the 7-star sword light platform and didn't leave even for a second. There, he could not only add greater flexibility to his sword, but he could reinforce his strength as well. Patrick didn't visit any practicing locations. His Buddhism cultivation method could not be improved by visiting any training places. His skills could only be enhanced through meditation. Zen's sister, Yan, didn't go back to Perdition Mountain. As there was only a half-month left before Zen had to go to Cloud Road. Since Yan rarely got the opportunity to spend time with her brother, every moment was precious to her. Usually, Yan watched as Zen practiced. She gazed at her brother as he exerted himself during his refinement. What she wanted was simple, to be around her brother. She didn't have much more to ask for. However, it seemed to be unfortunate for Yan. Such a tiny wish of her was still hard to come true, as she would have to say goodbye to her brother soon. Sometimes, Yan thought it would have been better if she and her brother had been born in an ordinary family. In that case, they would have been ordinary people and they could spend their lives peacefully. There wouldn't be so many difficulties and disasters in their lives, and they wouldn't have to work so hard to pursue something. Once a person decided to become a cultivator, hardships were part of their destiny. Not only would they obtain a lot, but they would also lose a lot. Today, Zen had chosen to refine while sitting at the top of the mountain in Drizzle Peak. He was trying to use his life vitality to get past the bottleneck of grade 4 of the nature level. As a matter of fact, Zen had accumulated enough strength to break through on his own. He could simplify the process by consuming some pills as well. However, Zen's foundation and basic strength would suffer if he chose to use pills. Furthermore, taking help now would make it more difficult for him to break through a higher level in the future. Each time Zen improved, it had happened naturally. Each time his life vitality reached its limit, Zen would achieve a breakthrough. Since he had never taken external help when refining, it meant that his foundation was extraordinarily solid. Just as Yan was watching Zen, a windstorm began. Thick clouds, like bales of cotton, were pulled closer as though grasped by an invisible hand. Yan's hair fluttered in the breeze. As the wind picked up speed, Yan's hair flew around her in a tangled mess. Zen also sensed the threat and frowned. The clouds in the sky thundered as they crashed into each other. Soon, they took the form of a human face. "What is this? Great signs from heaven?" Zen asked loudly. As he stared at the sky, Zen could feel the power radiating from the clouds. The force was so strong that even Kenneth Shi, the strongest one at Cloud Sect, could not compare with it. People besides Zen and Yan had noticed such a large, abnormal cloud formation. All other disciples of Cloud Sect and even some people at the imperial capital were frightened by it. The face was so large that so many people could see it. Many people who saw the face wondered if it was God. Religious people fell to their knees and burned incense in reverence. They prayed to the skies with the hopes that the phenomenon was a blessing. But some warriors knew that God had not forced the clouds together to form a face. This was orchestrated by a man with great power who had projected his life vitality into the sky. What level would a person have to be at to case his life vitality to a faraway place and shape it as his face? Even though the warriors understood that this was no heavenly act, they were terrified. The man capable of such a feat must have power far beyond their imagination. They couldn't even begin to imagine how high this person's level must be. To the warriors in the eastern region, this man might as well be God, as his power was so unimaginably frightening. Respect and admiration reflected on the faces of the warriors as they looked at the huge face in the sky. Hearing Zen's question, Yan smiled and shook her head. She didn't think that this phenomenon was connected to her. But soon, Yan found that she was wrong, as her fate was decided in the next few minutes. Several seconds after its appearance, the lips on the cloud face began moving. Kenneth Shi, come out now." The sound seemed to come from the sky, and each syllable was as loud as thunder. People cowered in fear as it sounded like the voice was exploding beside their ears. "The huge face in the sky has come to meet Master Shi." Zen's heart beat faster. Although he knew the huge face had not come for him, he felt a sense of foreboding. "Kenneth Shi, come outside." The voice roared. Soon a black dot flew to the sky. It was the leader of the Cloud Sect, Kenneth Shi. "Where is Yan Luo? Isn't she refining at Hell Mountain? Why did I sense that she was not at Cloud Sect a few days ago?" Each word from the large face's mouth was as loud as thunder. Zen's eyebrows shot up when he heard the face in the clouds asking about Yan. Moments later, his face paled and killing intent appeared in his eyes. The person who was projecting his vitality here was asking about Yan. Zen glared at the large face without blinking as he wanted to memorize all the features. Never in his life would he want to forget what this powerful man looked like. After all, this was the man who planned to make the lustful demon array. It was this man who wanted to rob Yan of her virginity. The more power that radiated from the colossal face, the smaller Zen felt himself be. In the past few years, he had refined and cultivated his strength to inspiring levels. However, when confronted by the power of this man, Zen felt as weak as an ant. As angry as he was, Zen didn't feel as though he could leave an impression on the man. After Kenneth whispered something to the huge face, the face turned to Yan and said, her improvement is too slow. You only have 1 month left to send her to me. Of course, I have ways to help her into the internal elixir realm. Stunned expressions could be seen on the faces of all the people and cultivators after they heard what the huge face said. Was it so easy to step into the internal elixir realm? A warrior had to pass numerous challenges and spend several years completing tasks before entering the illuminating soul realm. Reaching the consummation of the illuminating soul realm was as rare as a diamond in the rough. A man at the culmination of the illuminating soul realm could rarely meet a rival in his life. The internal elixir realm was even more demanding. A warrior at the internal elixir realm was the sovereign existence in the eastern region. It was estimated that perhaps no more than 10 cultivators at the internal elixir realm existed in the eastern region. But, now the face said that he was going to help Yan step into the internal elixir realm. Even though Yan had great talent, helping her reach the internal elixir realm would require superhuman skills. But no one thought that the huge face was exaggerating. By changing and projecting his life vitality over Cloud Sect, this person had already proven that he had unimaginable power. So people thought it was reasonable for him to give such incredible reassurances. Several disciples of Cloud Sect felt jealous of Yan. The chance to enter the internal elixir realm meant becoming one of the strongest people in the eastern region. And almost everyone had dreamed of achieving that. But Yan didn't feel the same way as the other disciples. Once the huge face stopped speaking, Yan rushed to her brother and hid in his arms. Her slim body trembled from fear. The entire time that she was imprisoned at Hell Mountain, Yan knew what awaited her in the future. But she didn't fear it as much then as she thought she could choose to die. If she was forced to do what she was unwilling to, she could find an opportunity to end her life. At least her body would be untouched by a man she didn't like. At that time, Yan was desperate. There was no hope in her life, and of course, she was not afraid of anything. But now Yan had found hope through her brother. Once she had found hope, she looked forward to extending it and dreamed that it would come true. At the same time, she feared that she would lose all her hope. This fear is what made Yan tremble. Zen held his sister and tried to calm her. He felt as though his sister was like a poor baby deer with great fear in her heart. Yan, please try to relax. I am always here. Zen looked at the huge face while he reassured his sister. He now had a better idea of the obstacles he would face in his path. He knew he would have to conquer these by himself. That meant he needed to kill this man. Kenneth seemed to be whispering something to the huge face again. Shortly after, the huge face replied, okay. Good. If I don't see Yan Luo in a month, Cloud Sect will no longer exist in the world. You can try if you don't believe me. Haha. After he finished, the large eyes of the face in the clouds turned toward Drizzle Peak. Zen stiffened. Apparently, he could feel the glare of the huge face. Zen didn't try to hide. His eyes glistened with determination as he stared back at the huge face. Oh, the man found Zen's reaction to be unusual. But he didn't say anything. Instead, after flashing a cold smile, the huge face disappeared from the sky as if it had never been there. Chapter 338, I will protect you. Deep inside, Zen thought that as the massive face went away, he sneered at him. When a cultivator made so incredible cultivation achievements, he would occupy an unimaginably high position. For such a cultivator, feminine charms were probably not that important. No matter how many women he wanted, he could have them anytime and all the time. Rather than attach great importance to Yan's appealing looks, he attempted to take her virginity only for the lustful demon array and cultivation. Perhaps, this person had the wrong impression when he saw Zen holding Yan in his arms. But, great men like him were quite indifferent to people like Zen, whose existence was like that of ants. The final sneer he gave reflected disdain, contempt, indifference and disregard. It wasn't until the massive face was out of sight that Yan finally raised her head. Even she was shocked by her own reactions. It had been a long time since something terrified her. But maybe she only seemed fragile because she was with her elder brother. "Brother, what shall we do? I don't want to be captured and taken away by him," Yan said anxiously. She looked seriously worried about the possible things that would happen to her. And her brother was helpless to make her stop thinking about it. In truth, it was even impossible for him to take Yan away from Cloud Sect. First of all, based on Zen's current strengths, he was no match for Kenneth. Second, the person projecting the enormous face in the sky had left imprints on Yan's body. It might be impossible for them to elude this man in the case that Zen managed to escape with his sister. "Yan, that man will do nothing to you before you reach the internal elixir realm through cultivations. Now, what you have to do is wait," Zen said in a firm tone, as he stared at her slightly innocent face, hoping to make Yan calm down. Coldly, Zen vowed, "Wait, we will make him wait, and then I will put him to death." "Put him to death," Yan murmured. Generally, ordinary people would never think of resisting such a strong master, but Zen's firm assurance made Yan think her brother would really do what he said. Could her brother make good his vow? Perhaps, brother only said this in an attempt to console me and make me calm down, Yan thought. That man who projected the enormous face in the sky might be a top master in the central region. And it was a fact that these masters' tactics were sometimes incredible. They were even capable of destroying mountains, rivers, and streams by merely raising their heads and feet. And this was what made them the top leaders of the warriors' world. If Zen stood before these top figures, he would seem like an ant to them. But he solemnly vowed to challenge and kill the lion. Would that be possible? Although Yan didn't believe that, she still nodded at her brother in acknowledgement with a forced smile. But Zen had an inkling as to Yan's thoughts since his sister wasn't very good at hiding her feelings. When he noticed the skepticism, he reached out to touzle Yan's hair and asked her with a smile, "Well, what's wrong? Don't you trust me? When you were on Hell Mountain, did you ever think that I could win the All Peaks competition? Did you believe that I could get you out of Torture Mountain?" She somehow knew her brother was teasing, so her mouth twitched. After a few moments, she winked at him and then quickly gave him an honest response, "No, I didn't believe that." "Ah, so, only when things happened did you choose to believe in me? Yan, you don't trust your brother, do you?" He smiled at Yan with a raised eyebrow. While his words sounded a little plausible, they were not entirely right. Yes, Zen had created some incredible miracles, and Yan acknowledged her brother's remarkable achievements. However, to create similar miracles again in the central region might be more difficult for Zen this time. Maybe, 100 men as mighty as Kenneth would be no match for that top master even if they fought together against him. "Yan, look at me," Zen appealed while fixing his eyes on his sister. In a serious tone, he continued, "I swear to you with my loyalty to martial arts that everything I have said to you is true. I promise to kill that person." "Ah," Yan stammered. She covered her mouth with one hand before she could finish her statement. After several seconds, Yan went on, "Brother, you don't have to use your loyalty to martial arts to make a vow. It was inadvisable to swear so rashly and arbitrarily. If Zen failed to keep his vow, his promise would bewitch him during his cultivation of martial arts in the future. At the same time, his strengths would not improve at all, unless he fulfilled his promise. Thus, very few warriors were willing to swear with their loyalty or dedication to martial arts. Nonetheless, it was clear to Zen that the master with that enormous face had already become a barrier to him, the one that he must clear if he ever wanted to reach the peak of martial arts. Whether Zen swore to do that or not had no difference because he was aware that he would be able to achieve greater things in martial arts as long as he killed that man. And he made that vow only because he expected to set his little sister's mind at rest and ease her worries. Bam, 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 as he descended from the sky, Kenneth clapped his hands loudly. Aura was beside him. Before this, the princess was on the hillside, but when she sighted the weird image in the sky and heard the enormous face speak, Aura naturally knew that the face appeared because of Yan. So, she rushed over by taking a flying chariot. "Well, that's great. Well done. Cloud Sect disciples are, without a doubt, heroic. Aura, you truly have an eye for choosing such an excellent disciple for Drizzle Peak," Kenneth declared. The laughter that followed echoed everywhere. Master Shi, Zen stood and greeted him with a salute. To acknowledge Zen's greeting, Kenneth nodded and said, I think you have heard what that man said. Yes, I did, Zen replied with a nod. That man is so powerful that I dare not go against his orders, so I can do nothing but take Yan away and hand her over to him. I hope that you won't blame me for not looking out for Yan's safety, Zen, Kenneth said while shaking his head as a show of extreme helplessness regarding the current situation. Master Shi, you're thinking too much. How can I blame you for this? Zen responded. He shook his head and shrugged his shoulders. While I fully support you in your vow with your loyalty to martial arts to put him to death, let me remind you that it is quite challenging to kill him. In the central region, there are still several people who can be paired up to fight that man, but it might be impossible to find someone to kill him, Kenneth sighed. No one in the central region was powerful enough to kill him. When Kenneth said this, Zen was slightly surprised before he realized that the man was indeed a top strongman in the central region. There were distinctions between winners and losers in top strongmen's fights, but killing their opponents in these battles was a little difficult for them. After all, warriors were neither timber piles nor beasts. Aside from their exceptional strength, top strongmen were skilled at fleeing and dodging. When two top strongmen fought with each other, it was extremely hard for either of them to kill the other if anyone ever tried to escape. Other than being shocked, Zen's eyes didn't dim at the information fed to him. Shortly after, his eyes gleamed to manifest his inherent self-confidence. Seeing the young disciple still look that confident with so great willpower for fighting, Kenneth could not help but admire Zen tremendously. Although Kenneth was mightier than Zen, he knew not to speak out when in front of that prominent figure. Instead, he held his breath in fear, as was a common practice among warriors. The weak ones had no choice but to yield to protect themselves. If they didn't know how to measure and consider the current situation, given their weak strengths, death was inevitable. It was clear to Zen the enormous disparity in strength between that man and himself, but he chose to maintain his self-confidence. It was unexpected for Kenneth to realize that Zen was much more loyal to martial arts. The greater his loyalty to martial arts, the higher the likelihood for Zen to achieve greater things in his career as a martial artist in the future. Master Shi, I have yet another question, Zen blurted out. What is it? Kenneth prodded with a firm nod. Just say it, he said loudly as Zen hesitated. What on earth is that man's name? Zen demanded. He wanted to know who this mighty person was. His name, Kenneth asked in surprise. After thinking a while, he continued, he is known as Evil East Lord in the central region. But his real name is Eddie Kui. Evil East Lord, Eddie Kui, Zen repeated that man's name several times to imprint them in his mind. Then, nodding, he said, Master Shi, thank you for telling me this. Since Eddie had given orders to capture Yan and turn her over to him, Kenneth decided it was no longer wise to make the same excuse that Yan was training in Hell Mountain. For fear that he would be on the receiving end of Eddie's might, Kenneth had to send Yan out of Cloud Sect. As head of Cloud Sect, he also felt somewhat depressed for not being able to protect his disciple. Kenneth was helpless to do anything to save Yan. But he had to face up to realities. In terms of strength, Kenneth was far stronger than Zen. And since he held a higher position, he was also far-sighted. Hence, he had a clearer understanding of how dreadful and horrible Eddie was. However, Zen had one advantage over Kenneth, and that was his youth. Since he was still very young, Zen had infinite potential for further exploration. There are ups and downs in every human being's life, and no one could accurately predict his or her destiny. If Zen could put the Evil East Lord to death as he had sworn to do, this would be entirely dependent on his luck. To this end, the first step for Zen was to take part in the subsequent test of Cloud Road. His final destiny would depend upon the achievements he would collect along Cloud Road, and if he could gain support from the Cloud Hall. In the early morning of the following day, Yan was set to leave. As she stood on the blue sky parking ground, Yan turned back from time to time while heading towards the chariot. Judging by her eyes, it was evident that she was reluctant to leave her brother Zen. With one foot already on the staircase extending towards the enormous flying chariot, Yan abruptly turned around, ran over to her brother and gave him a bear hug. Since she was 10 years old, she and Zen had been seldom together. After this separation, the two didn't know when they would meet again, or if they even would. Parting was just a matter of time. Although she was reluctant to leave, Yan finally stepped aboard the huge flying chariot, which ascended slowly towards the sky. Staring through the glass window of the huge flying chariot, Yan sat there still in a daze. On the other side of the glass, Zen gently waved his hand and then assumed a pose. His posture was quite familiar to Yan, who had seen it in Hell Mountain. So, naturally, Yan understood what this indicated. It meant, I will protect you. Chapter 339, Space Windstorm. As Zen's experience got deeper, his mind gradually became stronger and more tranquil. Evidently, he was not as impulsive and irritable as before. He was distressed about Yan's departure, but he quickly buried the emotion in the deepest recesses of his heart. A few days later, Zen, Rocher, and Patrick gathered at the Cloud Palace. The time for the Cloud Road trial had finally come. It was a most important day for them. The mindsets of all three were different. Rocher was looking forward to it as he had been wanting to go to the central region since long. He was eager to hone his sword in the outside world. And Patrick, as the reincarnation of Akalanatha, hoped to acquire a greater inheritance. To Zen, however, this felt inevitable. He was as if a toddler taking his first step. You three, come with me. Kenneth walked out of Cloud Sect. With a roll of his sleeves, he took the three of them with him, flying in a certain direction. They had mused that their path to Cloud Road would be similar to Yan's travel, that was to say, a ride on a giant flying chariot to the central region. The location was too far off from the eastern region. It would take half a month for a giant flying chariot to cross the vast mountains situated halfway. However, Kenneth flew with them in the opposite direction. Before long, a mountain appeared in front of them, the one inside Cloud Sect. It was not a well-known mountain. It seemed that Cloud Sect had not made use of it, no construction was done on it. It had no buildings. All in all, it was ordinary. But as they flew to the front of the mountain, Kenneth lowered all of a sudden, instantly landing at the foot of the mountain. Doubt climbed on the faces of the three disciples. They had no idea what Kenneth was up to. Was it possible that the legendary Cloud Road was hidden inside the mountain? The mountain was shrouded in much mystery. What secrets did it hold? Follow me, Kenneth said without further explanation, leading the way. Trailing behind him, the disciples soon reached the front of the mountainside. Kenneth waved his hand and the shadow in front of them slowly dissipated, revealing the wide, gaping hollow of a cave. The four entered the cave. They walked down a long corridor that ended in a vast and circular space. In the middle of the circular space, they found a platform about 10 feet wide and 2 feet high. On this platform were various carved runes that Zen, Rocher, and Patrick did not recognize. They also found 6 crystals around the platform. What kind of crystals are they? They seem to contain such pure life vitality. Could they be? Rocher said with enthusiasm, his voice trailing off as he considered the possibility. Patrick too was shocked at the pure and rich life vitality emanating off the crystals. A surprised look flashed across his usually calm eyes. Zen smiled wryly and said, "Those are life vitality crystals. They are supreme crystals. They have the highest grade?" Rocher asked, taking in a deep breath. He had wished to go to the central region, so he had a thorough understanding of what he would find there. He was aware that the central region was rich in life vitality crystals, but he did not expect to find that these were, in reality, supreme life vitality crystals. "Yes, those are supreme crystals," Zen said, confirming once again. It is said that the value of a supreme life vitality crystal is equivalent to that of 1 million cubic crystals. So, the value of these 6 must be 6 million cubic crystals. Are the supreme crystals required to start the magic array? You're correct. We ask for 1 million points for a test in Cloud Road as because 2 million cubic crystals are the cost to open the Cloud Road, Kenneth responded with a smile. However, Zen was a bit wrong. The supreme crystals are not required to start the magic array. That only needs the consumption of the cubic crystals. This is a transmission array, capable of transporting us 100,000 miles to the Cloud Road. Transmission array. At Kenneth's words, the 3 disciples were taken aback. According to the legends, the world's most powerful ones could transmit in space. They could exert enough force required to move in the wide universe, sending themselves or a thing a million miles away in an instant. It was the skill of some of the most powerful people on the planet. Now, there stood a transmission array in front of them, which was capable of transporting them to 100,000 miles away. Seeing the surprise on their faces, Kenneth continued, "This kind of transmission array may be rare in the eastern region, that's why you are surprised. In fact, in the central region, it is quite common. A transmission array depends on solid runes and can only transfer people to the corresponding location. There is a fundamental difference between this and the instantly transporting that some powerful people use. So that was what it was. Rocher nodded in agreement. This was one of the reasons why he wanted to go to the central region. The region was so prosperous. Comparatively speaking, the cultivators of the eastern region looked like country bumpkins next to those of the central region. It was just like the time when grassroots cultivators in the counties of the Burning Sky Empire walked into the imperial capital. Flying chariots were almost extinct in the counties, but they thrived everywhere in the imperial capital. Well, it's about time. Step inside. Kenneth took the first step up the stone platform, placing his feet on its runes. Zen, Rocher, and Patrick followed him. There is some discomfort the first time one makes use of the transmission array. You should stay as close to me as possible, Kenneth told them. Truthfully, what Kenneth wanted to say was that this particular transmission array was pretty old, a bit shaky and run down. The establishment of the channel was not very stable. Getting through it might pose some dangers. The eastern region was remote, and the Cloud Hall hardly paid attention to it. The original construction of the transmission array happened because of the Cloud sect. But after its construction, the lack of maintenance meant that now it was somewhat dilapidated. Upon hearing Kenneth, the three shuffled closer to him. Kenneth waved his hand and the 6 supreme crystals around the platform burst into pure light, and that was evidence of their burning life vitality. The pure energy was dazzling, but it did not make the eyes uncomfortable. Rather, it gave the onlookers a very intimate feeling. The life vitality of these supreme crystals could be directly absorbed by the cultivators. Rocher himself could not help but absorb the life vitality of the crystals. Kenneth hurriedly stopped him, shouting, "Hey! Stop that! This life vitality will drive the transmission array." Startled, Rocher halted in his action. Giving an embarrassed smile, he wiped his forehead uneasily. Zen and Patrick smiled at each other. Actually, they too had wanted to do just that and had hardly restrained themselves. All of a sudden, the light got brighter. The 4 of them entered the channel. "Is this a space channel?" exclaimed Zen as he floated in the air, glancing down at his surroundings. The space channel was surrounded by a blue mass. They moved toward the front ceaselessly and with high momentum. Zen couldn't detect what the speed was. Under such circumstances, his concept of space seemed to have completely disappeared. He was only aware that they were moving very, very fast. Rocher and Patrick, too, were curious. It was a novel experience for anyone who stepped into the transmission array channel for the very first time. Suddenly, about 5 minutes later, a bright blue light appeared in the front. "What's that?" Rocher asked eagerly. As Kenneth looked down to see, his face changed. "Stay behind me," he shouted. "That's Space Windstorm." The three were not sure what the Space Windstorm was, but from the looks of it, they knew that the power would be too great to withstand. Even Kenneth did not want to encounter the Space Windstorm. It didn't occur every time. This time, they had not been as lucky. Facing the Space Windstorm, Kenneth's giant body bulged up, tiny spots of yellow life vitality gathering on its surface, spreading quickly. "Ha!" Kenneth roared loudly, yellow life vitality expanding to something 10 times larger. It morphed into a giant shield to protect the group of 4. At the same time, the space windstorm swirled, making its way to them. Sizz, sizz, the space windstorm tore apart Kenneth's life vitality incessantly. A peculiar sound, like that of an electric current, echoed through the channel. Kenneth's life vitality did not stop flowing, still wanting to resist the space windstorm. As Kenneth fought it, Patrick and Rocher seemed to be holding their breaths. This was horrible. A slight mistake from Kenneth, a moment of lost concentration, and they would get rolled into the storm, their bodies turning to ashes. Zen's emotionless eyes, however, were fixed on the space windstorm. "Zen, what are you looking at?" Rocher whispered to him. Patrick looked at Zen strangely. Although the space windstorm was a sight to behold, any pair of eyes would exhaust themselves looking at it for a long time. As Zen watched the space windstorm, a bright blue storm penetrated Kenneth's life vitality shield like lightning, shooting directly into Zen's eyes. Chapter 340, The Space Rules. A snake-like streak of lightning suddenly extended and twisted from the bright blue windstorm. It rushed towards them, but even Kenneth's heavy life vitality shield couldn't resist it. Kenneth was undoubtedly powerful, but even he was afraid of the space windstorm. Patrick and Rocher would probably be burned to ashes if they ever came close to it. Thus, even Kenneth was shocked for a second. He wondered why this space windstorm had penetrated his life vitality shield without any difficulty at all. He was dumbfounded, while Roche and Patrick were white as a sheet with fright. They were the top geniuses of Cloud Sect and had more than enough experience. They had lived in all kinds of crises and even survived challenges on the edge of life and death. However, they didn't want to die with any grievances. It was just unfortunate that they were blocked by the space windstorm when they passed the transmission array. The three of them stared blankly at the space windstorm that shot into Zen's eyes. Would it make his head explode? After a while, something strange happened. After the space windstorm shot into Zen's orbs, he didn't react at all, but a blue light shone in his bright eyes. What's going on? Zen, are you okay? Roche and Patrick rushed to Zen to see if he was fine, but they were still afraid that their voices would alert the dense space windstorm of their presence. Meanwhile, Zen's eyes were blank. He had heard Roche's and Patrick's calls, but he only reacted after a while. I don't know what happened, I just stared at this space windstorm, and that's it, he said hesitantly. He randomly stared at it for no reason, but was that it? Patrick and Roche didn't believe him at all. However, Zen indeed didn't do anything. He was just curious about the space windstorm and wanted to check if it had hidden secrets. But, he was abruptly lost in a trance. It felt like he had understood everything in life. It was like when one suddenly found out the solution and completely understood the obscure arithmetic rules, and then solved the complicated subject in one go. There was a pause before Zen spoke. It seems that I have understood a little about the space windstorm. I found the rules for their arrangement, but I can't see clearly. Zen continued to speak with uncertainty and a blank look in his eyes, but he realized that some things had changed. The space windstorm was originally a mess made from countless blue space lines, like a streak of lightning. However, Zen had now seen that the space lines were in fact arranged according to certain rules, even if they looked messy. Yet Zen only found a few arrangement rules, which might be just 1 out of a million or even 10 million rules. When Kenneth, who had concentrated on stabilizing his life vitality shield, heard what Zen said, he immediately trembled. Even though he was occupied, he managed to turn his head around and looked at Zen. He was always calm and steady, but his eyes looked doubtful. What, Zen, did you say you found the arrangement rules of this space windstorm? Kenneth asked. He couldn't control his shock and his voice shook as he spoke. Zen nodded in agreement, but then shook his head. Just a little bit. I can't understand most of it, but I can see a few. A little bit. The windstorm that brewed in Kenneth's heart was probably even stronger than the space windstorm outside. These things were space rules, and this guy saw through them in a single glance. Although it was a bit impressive, it made him too strange. The space rule came down from the rule of the world's origin. The rule of space and time was everywhere. Every day, when people woke up, time passed, and when they left the bed to walk on the floor, space changed. Space and time always accompanied human life. However, space was stable at this time, and people felt its existence. But as for the space rule, it was impossible to comprehend it. Anyone could look at a mountain and see its beauty, but nobody could look at the sky and master the artistic conception of space. Still, it was different on the transmission array because it had broken the space and built a space passage connected to another transmission array. Moreover, the space was made from the energy of the supreme life vitality crystals by force, so the space in it was a bit unstable. The unstable space easily showed its weakness. In fact, the space windstorm was made from the weakness and the excess energy produced after the space was broken. Such a space windstorm in the short-distance transmission array couldn't be called as a real space windstorm. It was said that a space windstorm in a long-distance transmission array was terrifying, and even Kenneth would instantly turn into dust if he ever faced one. Then again, since the space windstorm was the space's weakness, someone might see it through, and maybe even master some space rules. It might be. It was possible, but it was extremely hard to find little bits of rules from the messy space windstorm. Kenneth found out with his insight that there was no one who had made it. But now, it seemed that Zen had made it. Kenneth doubted what Zen had said, but there was actually some space windstorm that broke through his life vitality shield and entered Zen's eyes a while ago. His life vitality shield was heavy and thick, without any loophole. Otherwise, the little space windstorm might have hanged Patrick and Roche. Thus, Kenneth assumed that the bright blue light was not the space windstorm, but a few space rules. Apparently, Zen could even master some space rules when he passed an old transmission array. Kenneth was speechless. On the other hand, Roche and Patrick didn't clearly see the hidden meaning, nor were they as shocked as Kenneth. They even wondered why Kenneth reacted so strangely. It would be weird if Kenneth wasn't surprised. He thought of one thing, a task that was once released in Cloud Hall. It was so difficult that he couldn't finish it. If he had twice his current strength, he might have a 20% chance of finishing it and probably 80% chance of dying. If anyone completed such a dangerous and difficult task, he could be rewarded to cultivate in the Sumeru space of the Cloud Hall for 10 days. The Sumeru space was kind of an independent space opened by the Cloud Hall. It was different from the independent space ring, and living people could enter the special Sumeru space. Inside this particular space was a broken stone inscription where some space rules were hidden. The reward of this tough task was to cultivate in front of the stone for only 10 days. However, the price was too high. Furthermore, the space rules hidden in the stone inscription were too few. It was quite hard to master the space rules depending on the stone inscription. Only 2 or 3 out of 1,000 people who had entered the Sumeru space had mastered the few space rules. Those 1,000 people were strong enough to have completed such a difficult task, so they qualified to enter the Sumeru space. They were much more powerful than Kenneth. Each of them were so perfectly talented. It could be said that the space rule was quite precious. It would be a great help for Kenneth if he could comprehend some space rules. So many cultivators more powerful than him scrambled for it. However, today, he took Zen to the transmission array for the first time, and Zen understood it. It was no surprise that Kenneth was really jealous of Zen for a second. He didn't know if he was jealous of Zen's luck or talent. Zen was at only grade 3 of the nature level, but he had the sword spirit avatar and comprehended some space rules. Kenneth wondered what he did when his cultivation was of the same grade. It was safe to say that this man was abnormal and his extraordinary skills would make anybody jealous. Sir, Zen said that he had seen some rules. What are they? Roche asked. He was curious when he saw the astonished look in Kenneth's eyes. Kenneth simply coughed and decided not to explain to them. The trial on the Cloud Road was about to start. If he mentioned the space rule, it would just frustrate Roche and Patrick and impact their performances. It was better not to say anything. Just then, it got increasingly brighter in the front. Kenneth seized the chance to change the topic and announced, "Get ready. We're arriving."